Have you ever watched something that completely rewired your brain chemistry?
A procedural network drama might not be your usual pick, but it's ours.
This is The Buddie System, a 911 deep dive podcast hosted by three friends who have DM'd each other enough character dissertations to earn a PhD in media literacy. I'm Han, coming to you straight from the characters' heads.
I'm Sil, bringing you to the observation deck.
And I'm Rachel, connecting the dots with my red string. With our powers combined,
No stone is left unturned.
and no Buddie is left behind. This episode brought to you by Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish. Welcome to Dispatch. What's on call this week?
This week we're discussing Season 2, Episode 8, titled Buck Actually, written by Matthew Hodgson, directed by Varda Barkar, and it originally aired Monday, November 5th, 2018. Oh, November 5th.
I know.
Triggered. This is before that November 5th, okay? By 2 years. We haven't gotten there yet. But soon. Yeah, every time. Just triggered. We had 4 calls of the week. The first one was See Me, Norman, where a woman goes to extreme measures on top of a freeway overpass to get her husband's attention and imploring him to see her. The next one is, to borrow Athena's phrasing, Bonnie and Clyde meets Dumb and Dumber, where a pair of bumbling thieves' idea of a date of robbing a gas station gets thwarted. The next one is Till Tree Bark Do We Part, where a newlywed couple gets into a car accident that veered off the road and crashed into a tree, trapping them both. And then the last one we see in this episode is Up, But Make It Gay, or less depressingly from Sage Hannah Montana, Life's What You Make It. And in this one, an elderly couple prepare for a day of making new memories when their car, left in neutral, rolls down their driveway, trapping one of the two men, and his husband gets to have a moment before he also passes away, which is really sad. What a great way to...
It makes me cry every time.
It does.
Before we get into that, today is a special episode because we have our very first guest, my friend Meg. Yay!
Hi!
Yay!
Yay!
Welcome!
She begged me to watch this show for so many years,
So many years. You're welcome.
and I finally started it 5 months ago. And she's not bitter about that at all.
Yeah, I absolutely love that I've been watching this show since it premiered, and I have been alone in the trenches.
Oh, man.
In the Buddie trenches for so long, and I kept begging Han to watch the gay firefighter show, and she just wouldn't. And then all of a sudden, she's watching it, and then there's a podcast. I'm like, oh my God. It went, literally, it seemed from one day to the next. I think in our DMs, you can see, I'm not going to watch it until the two guys that you want to get together are going to get together. And then, hey guys, do you think Buddie System is a good name for a podcast? Like, it was literally that fast. And yeah, I think it's great that I started watching the show because I wanted hot firefighters and the other shows were too sad. Like Chicago Fire was just too depressing, and then they had to watch 7 different series in order to keep up with it, pretty much. And I was like, this will be so lighthearted. And now, 8 seasons later.
We thought, oh my gosh.
They gaslit you hard.
You've been putting in the work.
This is my respite from Destiel Hell, and how did I jump from the frying pan to the fire?
Can never escape.
Anyways, hi, I'm so excited.
But hey, you only had to wait 7 seasons instead of 15, and then they didn't even kill Buck after he came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did. I mean,
they killed him beforehand, but
Yes,
they didn't
true.
kill him after.
He's just mostly dead. No.
Mostly dead means partly alive.
God. So, what does everyone think about this episode in particular?
Like, it's really funny because the first 2 calls of this week, like, are such a different tone than the last two, and it really like kind of transitions mid episode. Yeah, it was interesting to see kind of like this transition, this like switch in tone of at least the calls. Everything else was still kind of a little more lighthearted where it pertained to our characters a little bit. And I think that really shows some of the kind of like optimism and starting anew that we were kind of looking into in the last maybe couple episodes as well.
I mean, it's a Buck-centric episode, so I like it. I don't know what else to say about it.
I think it's actually such a great Buck episode, though, too. And I think you can really see him go from passively participating in his life and from trying to find love and quote unquote be a grown-up and stuff to actually actively kind of pursuing it after the call with Thomas and Mitchell, when Mitchell tells him, you don't like love doesn't like this doesn't find you, you make it. And that's when he's like, he decides, oh, I don't have to just continue doing what I was afraid of going back and going back to Buck 1.0. I can actually start becoming an active participant in trying to find what I'm looking for. And I feel like from this point on, he really just continues to do that more and more throughout the series. So I liked it because I love Buck.
We all love
Shocking.
Buck here.
I think that's why I get to be a guest.
Not a requirement.
We're not letting people on this podcast who do not like Buck. So sorry. What are you doing here? Very confused.
Why are you watching the show if you don't like Buck?
Well, yeah, because he's very main character syndrome. Like, it is ensemble, but anyway. So, what are your thoughts?
I really like him, like, I really like Buck, like, try to grapple with, like, how he doesn't want to become Buck 1.0, and I guess his, like, journey throughout, and, like, trying to figure out, well, like, what he really wants in a relationship and trying to pursue that.
Yeah, it's nice when he tries to do things for himself instead of just constantly being the puppy that is trying to help everyone else.
Well, and I think realizing that he deserves to have that love and he deserves to have that love story and have more than bathroom hookups and being abandoned by his first serious relationship. And I do love that he took the step to be like, okay, this is not healthy for me.
Yeah.
This is not good for me, and move out of the apartment that he's been haunting, I think it is. We were talking about last week.
Yeah.
And grow up in a lot of ways, because he's still very, very young. I think he's like 27 or something at this point in the show. And I don't know, this is a favorite Buck episode of mine, just because it's a huge step for his character. Now, if only he stops referring to himself as 1 point and 2 point and 3 point. I think he's on like 6.7 now.
He might be.
Well, you have to have the patches, okay? Sometimes you get an upgrade and you're like, there's some bugs, so you gotta work out some of the kinks.
Each season he changes. So
oh my god.
That's called growth. So many software updates. But yeah,
upgrades.
I think this episode is so great, and why it's such a like widespread favorite, because it has wide reaching implications for so much of the show going forward, so much for the characters going forward. We also see, like the beginning of Maddie with Maddie and Chimney, and that,
Maddie begins.
Yeah, it is Maddie begins. It sets up a lot for the characters, like just moving forward, that we still kind of see it's the foundation for what we see going forward.
Shall we get into deep dive?
Sure.
We're gonna need the jaws of life over here.
We found a couple articles, each of us.
Yeah. So there is this interview with Oliver in Paste magazine talking about like season 2. I think he was getting interviewed like in season 2B at this point. or like the start of it. So like there's some very vague answers about what's going to happen there. But there were a couple things that I really liked him talking about his character in particular. And since this is, you know, a Buck-centric episode, I thought I would read one of the answers. You should read the article. Because then there's, you know, stuff about him personally that I find interesting, but like our show is not about Oliver Stark, so sorry. It's about the character.
So sorry.
I'm leaving.
He's leaving. He's saying, but I'm also here. So the interviewer asked, tell me a little bit more about creating Buck, because on paper he could have been, you know, a character we've seen a lot before, like a good-looking guy gets like a ladies' man, whatever, but he's become so much more than that. And Oliver said, I wouldn't say I did any more than what was on the page. I think they wrote this part that was very much three-dimensional. He had this journey to go on. By starting him in the pilot episode in this place, it was a foundation so we could move forward from it. It's a real joy to get to play because I honestly don't feel like there are many characters where in one moment he gets to be the swashbuckling hero. The fuck kind of verbiage is that? The swashbuckling hero, and then in the next he gets to be really sensitive and really vulnerable. And I think that it's really important to show young people that you can be both at the same time. You can be confident and have a certain swagger, and you can also be really emotional and cry, and that's all okay to be in one person. It's really something of an honor to play this character.
Aww.
So
What a cancer response, though.
I know. Yeah, it really is. And then I have another article from the Pop Culturalist, an interview. I think it's probably around the same time. He's talking about Buck 1.0 for 2.0. So, and I thought that was very relevant for where we are. Throughout your character's arc, we see him toe the line between Buck 1.0 and 2.0. As an actor, what's more fun to explore, Buck's progression or regression, which I think is also like relevant right now in season 8. Yeah. Oliver said the progression for sure. It's always nice to start in that kind of 1.0 position, but to have been able to grow out of that and grow with the story has been really lovely. On the flip side of that, nobody is perfect. Every now and then Buck slips back into the past, but that's because he's human. Getting the chance to play both tells a more authentic story. I like this one too. What's been the most surprising part of Buck's journey for you? And he said, to be honest, when I took the job, I didn't really know anything. It's all come as a lovely surprise. I've enjoyed playing through the arc for sure, but also I think the way that the goodbye with Abby was handled was surprising. I really liked that it ended with Buck being the one to find the strength to walk away from it instead of having her send a letter back and breaking up with him. It was an empowering moment for him, which I totally agree with.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He needed to be able to do that on his own.
Yeah. And then one more thing from this one. We should have talked about this in the episode Stuck. Oh, well, sorry. This is what you missed on Glee. Each episode teaches a life lesson. Which has resonated with you the most and why? And Oliver said, it'd be the Stuck episode. It was a reminder that everybody has stuff they're dealing with. Mine will be different from yours and yours from the next person. Most of the time, though, we're all stuck in our own little worlds and dealing with our own issues. It's important to remember to always be kind to each other because we're all going through something.
Ooh. I love that.
So down to earth.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
When he's not being a menace.
He's not being mean.
As long as you're not boring.
Imagine them asking him a question that he's like, sorry, that's
No.
boring. Next.
Just like, no.
Interview.
Next question.
Just no.
Or, sorry, I wasn't supposed to be mean, but...
Sorry, I forgot I wasn't supposed to be mean.
The snark jumps out and he's like, oh gosh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
I forgot to turn the
But
dial back down.
I highly recommend both of these articles just because I love hearing him talk about the character because like this is going to sound like a no duh like he should because he plays the character, but he really gets the character.
Yes.
Because some actors don't. Like I think he understands the fact that characters are an amalgamation of not just what he does or the words on the page. So
Like it's very collaborative.
Exactly.
I think so too. Yeah, I really love getting to read what these actors have talked about their characters. You know, going back in the archives and reading past articles. Because it's just like so kind of refreshing to see how like in tune they are with their characters, especially like Oliver Stark and Ryan Guzman. I have a couple it's really one, but it also references another article. So, and it's from the day that this episode aired, and it's from TV Insider. It's called 911 Star Oliver Stark Talks Buck's Love Life and Saying Goodbye to Abby. And there's a couple quotes from here as well. One of the questions was, single Buck is now a little bit awkward in the dating field. Is it fun to play that? And he talks about how, it is awkward to dip your toe back into those waters. And it's much to the amusement of the characters around him, because they remember him as this kind of like gung-ho, almost womanizing guy. Whereas now he's a lot more settled and mature. But I think this was a similar quote to one of the ones that you shared, Han. He thinks it's much more human and something that we can all relate to. It's kind of come full circle, but it's also a new chapter for him at the same time. And then the next question was about his relationship with Taylor Kelly. Like, what was his reaction to the script when he read that? And when he said he was a little taken aback, like, oh, are we just going back to old Buck? They assured him that wasn't going to be the case, but it's kind of interesting to me that he was like,
trust the process.
Wait, are they doing this? Like, excuse me? I've worked so hard. Probably. This is me projecting. And he said it's kind of a point of pushing Buck to the cusp of being season 1 Buck and seeing then what decision he's going to make. It's important to test your characters and find out who they really are. To put them back into a possible relationship is a nice way to see if the impact of his relationship with Abby has been long lasting or if he's going to fall back into old patterns. And I think that also plays into one of the themes for this episode as well. He also said, when asked what else he wants to see for Buck in this season, he said, I think we've seen him put on a mask and be this thing that maybe he didn't need to be in season 1. So moving forward, he wants to see him like continuing to grow. And Oliver said that he found a lot of himself in Buck and a lot of Buck in himself. So it's really quite therapeutic character to play.
I was just going to say, there's like an elaboration of that kind of answer, like talking, someone specifically in one of the articles that I mentioned, like asked him about how he relates to the character. And there's like 2 paragraphs.
That's those in your articles. Those are like really good questions. I want to read them a little more later. And then he was asked about, the bromance between Buck and Eddie. It's the fan favorite bromance. What do you think about the reaction viewers had to it? Reporters ask this, or journalists ask this all the time. And, so he said that he is very glad that it's a sign that people are invested in the show, invested in the characters. And he feels like all firefighters have to trust the person next to you with your life. And there's a certain kinship that comes out of that. And that's also in response to, I think the same journalist asked Ryan a couple weeks prior, pretty much the same question. And Ryan Guzman gave about the same answer. Ryan said that they didn't expect that it was going to grow to where it is now, but they're very pleased with it. So just one of those things where they keep asking them, like, I didn't expect this kind of bromance. What do you think of it? And that's like the professional journalist's way of asking about like shipping without really asking about shipping.
Yeah.
It's so funny to think about those like very PR answers that both of them were giving to the bromance. And I don't know why. The bromance just that
I fucking hate
the bromance
that.
word needs to kind of die.
Yeah, I don't like it. Like, anyway, but I love seeing or reading those answers from back in 2018 in season 2, and the show was a little bit less secure in its future, and there was so much more kind of diplomatic about what they were saying, to now it's there's so much more unhinged Oliver and Ryan.
Yeah.
They
about
really
it. And there's no subtlety anymore from journalists. So they're practically like, hey, so when are you guys gonna when are they gonna fuck, guys?
And like some of it I think is a question of, how far we as a society have gotten to like fandom being pushed into the mainstream, which I think it really has in the last like just handful of years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that plays a
when
factor
everyone was stuck
into
in
that.
their houses for a year.
Yeah. And everybody was like, what is there to do? And then everybody joined fandoms because like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
what else do you do with your life? Like, I don't know.
We wouldn't know.
Couldn't be us.
Do you have more from that article? Because I have a
Go ahead.
couple things from a YouTube video interview. I think it's from PaleyFest.
Oh.
And
not the recent
so there were
one?
a couple things, from
Okay.
season 2.
Back in the day.
I'll link it so you guys can watch it. It's only like 4 or 5 minutes, but there's a couple interesting things where like he says that like the audience was not receptive to the new love interest that the show is trying to introduce. So like Taylor and Allie, because they were really invested in Abby. And Meg, I need you to explain this to me.
Please.
Why were people really invested in Abby or the whole thing? Okay, so fun story.
Why were they invested in Abby? Because like, currently, and I'm in a fandom space, but people were invested in that relationship.
You're looking at it from, you already know, what she did, how she left things with Buck. At the time when we were watching it, we weren't sure whether at season 1 ends, we weren't sure whether Connie Britton was coming back or not. Like that wasn't sure.
Right.
We didn't know how they were going to handle that situation. I actually was a little annoyed about Abby and Buck, not because I didn't like Abby, because I actually did like Abby until she did her stuff. I wanted her and Bobby to get together.
Oh my God.
I love that face that you just made.
Did you listen to the episode where we talked about that?
I did not, actually.
I'm so glad you said that. We were
so
all like, we were
again,
all like,
this was
is this
watching live.
Is this a vibe? Like, are they trying to make this?
No, so we were picking up on that vibe and we were like, this is weird.
Like when they met in
what are they trying to do?
When they met in the firehouse. And again, you guys watched all of it kind of all developing and you binged it. And I think this is what's so interesting about the difference between binging stuff and watching it live and not really knowing where it's going. Watching it back, I'm like, why? Why would I ever do that to Bobby? But like Bobby and Athena was such a huge surprise when we were watching the show, because it was not something that was really, they didn't interact a whole lot yet. And it wasn't something that was really on the radar.
They didn't put a lot of breadcrumbs in there.
Yeah, pretty much. Taylor and Allie, I think Oliver Stark then attributed to people being really interested or invested in Abby. And I think that's true to an extent, because a lot of people really did like their relationship and liked the growth that Buck went through as a result to this relationship, even though I say it a million times, Abby did not follow the campsite rule, and it makes me angry all the time.
Clean up when you leave?
You're supposed to leave it better than when you came. You're not supposed to break it. But
oh no.
Yeah, by this point in season 2, I for sure was all in on Buck and Eddie. Like I was, as soon as Eddie showed up, as soon as they played What a Man and did this like
that was
sexy scroll,
something shifted.
I was like, God damn it! I was trying to escape the Destiel. Never gonna happen. Pain ship, and here we are again. But it was really similar to the kind of toxic stuff that we would see with the supernatural fandom of just not liking women.
Any female.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of conflation. Like, I liked Taylor as an antagonist. I don't really like her as a love interest. But that's because I don't like Taylor. That's because I don't like her as a person.
I love to hate her. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, she, like, when the thing with Dosed, that episode, when she was just like, well, I was going to do all of it. I was like, I was going to air all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I want to see you be a bad guy. And I think she'd been really interesting in that role.
Yeah.
And Allie was more just not liking that it wasn't Buck and Eddie. And I think the Buddy fandom has been kind of feral for a very long time, and it's just it has really reached a boiling point since season 7. I don't know why.
No reason. Could mean nothing.
But like retroactively seeing how Allie treats Buck is a reason I'm not thrilled with her. I didn't have an issue with her until she was like, "Oh, this thing I knew you did, now I don't like."
Yeah.
You know.
I think I understood the general audience not being super interested in Taylor or Allie because like they very obviously like don't seem like great fits, or like that they met in a way that you'd be like, yes, I want these people to get together. But it was just the fact that that he was like, oh, and the audience got so into the Abby Buck relationship and it was really great, and I was like, I need Meg to explain this to me.
and I think that was just kind of what Oliver
watching it live
and kind of what Buck and Eddie was like. The fans were very much into it in a lot of ways, but it was still very keep it away from the cast, keep it like
we were in that era, right?
The Reddit thread would downvote any conversation that you'd have about it and stuff like that.
Jeez.
And I think for a lot of people not liking Taylor and Allie is more because the writers do not seem to know how to integrate other characters into
the ensemble.
In this ensemble, which is so surprising because Maddie and Eddie are not original cast members, and they went in so seamlessly, and I think it's because they weren't putting him in there to be a love interest. And I think that's kind of where it really falters, and it does that with all of the love interests that weren't a part of it already.
Because it doesn't, I guess, kind of, they don't establish them as fully fleshed out enough characters on their own before they chuck them in as a love interest. Like you could say, because they introduced Tommy, they introduced Anna before. Well, I think Anna was like with purpose, but
you're not invested in them as like an individual character before they are introduced as a love interest. But anyway, let me finish so we can move on.
That's my explanation.
I love fandom history.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. That makes sense. That Bobby Abby lore drop was.
It was a thing that I was wanting at first. And looking back, I give myself the ick.
If you knew then what you know now.
Scroll back to 2018 and you can see me quietly tweeting while I watch the show by myself.
Oh, God.
I'm a Cancer, too.
Yeah. She's a Cancer Gryffindor, so.
Aw.
So the other thing that Oliver said in this interview that I really loved, and I think it kind of overlaps with something that he said in the article that you read, is that he doesn't think that Buck will revert back to his womanizing ways. And he says that he thought the womanizing was always a cover for something else. Maybe him not being fully okay with who he was, and now that he's grown past that, like the womanizing, it's fully in his past. So I liked that because, well, what he said in yours, that he is a mask, and this one, that that it's a cover for something else, and not fully being okay with who he is. And it's like, we've been saying that since episode 1. Since day 1, we've been saying that. So I just love when
he validates
the actors
us.
say the things. Yes. Thank you, Oliver.
It feels like such a nice little pat on the head. Just like, good job.
You're so smart.
Smart and we're funny and people should listen to us.
It's our tagline.
Is our motto.
All right, so just super, super fast. This one's sad. So sorry.
Hands red string corner this time.
It is hands red string corner. So the death of Mitchell, the older gay man, was likely based on the death of Anton Yelchin in 2016. I didn't make that connection, and that made me really sad. I was like, this was already sad. I didn't need to be sadder about that.
I thought about that too. That was 2016?
That was 2016.
Jeez.
Yeah. But yeah, it was the same. It was pretty much that same thing. pinned him against a security fence to roll down the driveway while in neutral. And then just that the title is obviously from Love Actually, the title of the episode. Just to break that down very as macro as we can get, it's a story of 9 different love stories. And so the parallels are not really direct parallels of the relationships, but there are 9 relationships here. So we have Lola and Norman. Wow, they're a mess. The couple in the crash, I don't think we ever learned their names. Ruth and Earl, the cutie pies at the gas and sip.
The supernatural canon gas and sip.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's the same universe, you guys.
Yeah.
It is the same universe. Give me more crossover fic. I love Dean and Buck besties.
Dean was going to apply.
He was.
Dean was going to apply to be a firefighter.
My god.
Oh.
I don't think the world could handle Dean and Buck and Eddie all in one firehouse.
No, but I kind of want it.
That's too much.
Anyway, then we have Athena and Bobby, obviously. We have Michael and Glenn. We have Maddie and Chimney, who are dating, but not dating. Then we have Buck and Taylor, Mitchell and Thomas, and then Buck back at it again, Buck and Allie.
Incredible.
I would list Buck and Eddie and say that they did 10, but there's not really a Buck and Eddie scene in here, and I feel like that was slightly intentional.
The newlyweds were Paul and Anne.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Look what they did in 42 minutes, an entire Love Actually thing, when Love Actually took like what? Hour and a half, 2 hours? 2.5 hours?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so good.
It's way more enjoyable to watch, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, Hannah didn't like Tommy as soon as she found out that Love Actually was his favorite movie. That was the end.
That's fair. Sorry, so
it's a weird favorite movie. I'm sorry.
That is a weird favorite movie.
I mean, he's problematic. So
Says a person who never watched
Everything about him is weird.
He's problematic, so of course he loves Love Actually.
I mean,
there are some questionable things in Love Actually, okay?
You know he loves Hugh Grant.
Anyway.
But speaking of other rom-coms, right? So there's a reference to the movie Say Anything, when Norman like puts on what was it, In Your Eyes by Peter Gabriel on the iPhone and like holds it up over his head. So that's in reference to the movie.
I'm just saying that Deadpool 2 did this too. Wait, or was it Deadpool 1? No, it was 2 because it was for Colossus. And that came out in May of 2018. So maybe it's a Deadpool reference.
I'm pretty sure it's a Say
I know
Anything
it's not.
reference.
The Deadpool
Norm's a big Deadpool fan.
Anyways, so I didn't get to finish my thing.
Sorry. I saw a chance to make it about Deadpool, so
fair. So
I need to do a plug. So go ahead.
No, thank you. So the putting the song with the iPod with the iPad with the phone, like raising the phone with the song playing above the head is a reference to Say Anything, which was a teen romantic comedy from 1989, and it had a very famous scene where the love interest like hoists this boom box, because it's the 80s, hoists this boom box, and I think it's the same song over the head.
To explain what a boombox is to our younger listeners.
That was dedication. Those things were like 20 pounds.
Yeah,
they were really heavy.
And when you put the batteries in it, that was like 8D batteries.
That's why it was such like a powerful like
gesture. Yeah.
And they reference it in the text saying like, that was our first date, like going to see that movie. So it's supposed to be a very romantic thing, but that's what that's from. Now we can move on.
I actually do recommend that movie.
It is
Not that anyone
That's a good
cares
movie.
about my opinion, but yeah, it's a really good movie.
Who cares about your opinion? They're listening to this episode. all about our opinions.
So anyway, for the 50th time, should we talk about themes?
Okay, so I think one of the first major themes we see is feeling seen. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Meg, to subject you to this.
No, Meg will laugh at all of your jokes like that.
oh,
No,
perfect.
she has the same
I
sense
am
of humor.
gonna
It's terrible.
Boost your ego so high.
I appreciate that so much. It's a real tough audience here sometimes, you know? With all the groaning and the grumbling. So I appreciate
Not
it.
everyone
But
can
then
have
when we laugh, isn't it that much better and like satisfactory when we actually do laugh?
It makes me feel like I win.
not everyone has exquisite taste.
Thank you. Thank you. And same to you. Anyway, so feeling seen, which is very explicitly stated during the call with "See me, Norman," obviously, and that concept of having your significant other or your partner or someone like see you instead of seeing through you. There's also this kind of idea of seeing eye to eye, like being on the same page that we see a lot with relationships in the show, but also like seeing things from a different perspective. And I believe we've talked a lot about how Buck always thinks that he's being seen, but he's not actually
Mm-hmm.
being seen.
I just feel like she sees
Yeah.
me.
So it's kind of like an opposite problem to what Lola has, because she's like, Norman doesn't see me, and Buck's all like, they do see me, but they don't. So in the last episode, we also talked a lot about like having empathy for others, and I think that kind of continues in with, you know, this seeing things from different perspectives, kind of like understanding where one person may be coming from and something like that. And then there's also this idea of second chances. So second chances at love, you know, where they have Norman and Lola, and second chances like for Maddie starting new. But also learning from mistakes and self-growth, which we see a lot with Buck as well, because obviously this is a Buck episode. There's also, I kind of thought like this establishment of a routine that we see with a lot of these 9 couples that you point out, where something has or habits, like something has become habitual. So we see a lot of things kind of feeling like they do this all the time, like Maddie and Chimney, they go to this karaoke bar all the time. Let's get the same thing that we got last time. And, you know, like this kind of usual shtick, which I think can also be seen in like a relationship when things kind of go stale a little bit, and how to break the routine enough to or breaking habits, you know, getting out of that feeling of being stuck. We see continue going on. I think stuck was really like pivotal in this. But then also like in those like established routines, you can also feel comfortable. So I think that also goes back to stuck as well, where like when we had Athena being offered that promotion and she spoke with Bobby about it, and he's like, it's okay if what you have now is enough, like you're comfortable, but it's not a bad thing. So you know, there are two sides to that coin, where a routine or a habit can be something that doesn't benefit, but it can also be beneficial in a way that's like you feel comfortable enough to, I guess, like maybe feel vulnerable with someone else or anything like that, or put yourself out there. That's kind of what I took from that.
I'm not sure if you mentioned it already. But I also, just looking at this, like, I feel like this could tie into Buck not wanting to go, regress back or to his season 1 self.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more like, at least with him, it's more like just maintaining his newer habit or just not breaking the one that he has right now,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, like that
Yeah,
tension.
definitely.
That tension of like trying to break out of a routine or break a habit that you had, and how like that does take work in order to do that, because you could so easily like fall back into those patterns, and then you're just kind of like spinning your wheels, like we heard Maddie kind of say in the last episode, where when she was talking with Buck. What was it that she said?
Is it that he knows deep down what he like?
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I think you know what to do or something.
Oh, that it would just be you holding yourself back from your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. But it was
Gotcha.
in the same conversation. It was all part of that same thing. So it was, yes.
So, like, one thing that I did find that was obviously not listed was like gratitude or like appreciation for I guess the people or the relationships that you have in your life. So like I was really tying that into some of the calls we've seen, like the Mitchell and Thomas call. I was tying that into the Norman and Lola call. I don't remember their names, but the ones the two workers from the gas and sip.
Ruth and Earl.
Ruth and Earl.
I adore them.
They're so cute.
Also not listed on here. It's really just the thread of the grand. It didn't have to even be like a grand gesture, but like some of the gestures or the romantic gestures that were like shown on the show as well. So, we already talked about Lola and Norman, Earl and Ruth, so he like tried to help her. It wasn't really like a romantic gesture, but I mean he was being like,
it could be
so
hero-y.
romantic. Everything he only was thinking of her. I thought that was very romantic.
Cute.
It is romantic. I mean, Maddie and Chimney.
Maddie and Chimney. So yes. So, he when they're at the bar, he like orders her like her, choice of wine. And like even when they're in his apartment, he's like, they do like this Buffett Fridays or whatever it is that they called it. So
Fridays.
Buff Fridays. So like I feel like a lot of the like romantic interest had like some kind of romantic gesture that was like shown in the episode. And Bobby and Athena at the end, because I remember like in the beginning she was like, I wish it was just the two of us having dinner together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think that part goes a lot into the feeling scene too. Like Bobby clocked that and made sure to set up that time for just the two of them, and I think that's a really good way of seeing your partner.
Yeah, it's like these grand gestures of like thinking only of their partner, but like in a way that's productive and not necessarily like stopping LA traffic. On the freeway.
That's a grand gesture.
It's a grand gesture, but it's maybe a little less productive.
It's a grand gesture, but it's not safe.
Yeah.
The weird things I think of is, do you think she got like charged or billed for the big inflatable thing she shot and punctured?
Absolutely.
She should.
Well,
those are the things when I watch, my God, that's so much money.
Because I think that would be part of like the charges that Athena listed off, and I did not write them down because there were too many and it was like mildly excessive. But I think like destruction of public property that's probably included in there. Yeah. So she was almost definitely fined for that.
But she was seen.
But she was seen by So
Everyone.
many.
She accomplished her goal.
She did.
She has confidence that I absolutely could not have of flashing social media.
Oh my
I'm not
God.
sure that
Why did it
can
make
be
me flash back to I just wanted to see my
confidence.
little brother? Well, you did. Why is this show like this?
Tasteful nudity.
Mm.
No, I thought that was a great one, Sil.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
So I just have one very obvious one, and then another one that maybe is less obvious. I don't know. I always feel like the ones that I pick out are like, duh. But love.
But they're valid because it's true.
Love.
Mhm.
And specifically finding it, making it, maintaining it, like nurturing it, like
Mhm.
all of the things that go into starting, building, maintaining
Mm-hmm.
a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like
And
it takes
then-
work.
It does. And communication, and like maybe if you communicated with each other and had a conversation with your husband, you could have like
Avoided jail
Yeah.
time.
I don't know. We've established that she's crazy. Like we see that
Oh,
again in the
man.
future. But
Right.
yeah. So
Oh, Lola.
and then
They're a hoot.
another one, which I think maybe is my favorite theme, is you don't even know me.
we see this pop up a lot as well, right?
It does, yeah. You don't even know me, which I feel like I could list down for almost everyone here, except for maybe Chimney and Maddie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait, that's because they know each other.
yeah. And I'm not saying like Bobby and Athena have that. I'm just saying like Athena has that with
Glenn?
Glenn. Thank you.
Len.
I should remember.
What
It's
a
like the
suck-up.
most. He's only there for like 5 minutes. Like I'm never gonna remember his name. I'm sorry.
I want to come back to that because I want to discuss that when we get to it.
That scene was so funny.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it's very much a like it can be taken two different ways. It can be taken in like in relationships, whether romantic or platonic, where you're like it goes in with being seen, I guess, where it's like you don't really know me or you don't know me anymore, or with Buck,
Yeah.
he doesn't even know himself.
Mhm.
She says that in the mirror while he cries.
Or it can be
At
like
Chimney's
you know
apartment.
Chimney's like
Door
my
open.
water bill went up so much. You've been here for a couple of days. But yeah, it can also be like from strangers being like perceived in a way where it's like you don't even know me, so like you can't judge me.
Yeah,
That
like
kind of thing.
all of the people seeing Lola on social media
Mhm.
and the news, and like I mean Taylor Kelly's there, so like she's plastered all over.
Mhm.
So ooh.
Yeah, getting judged by Bunny Boo would have to be kind of low about your attitude. For Buck.
Oh man.
I thought like transitions I felt like was the really obvious kind of big theme of the episode too. Like we see people transitioning from like obviously Buck's transition from 1.0 to 2.0, not quite complete. He's buffering a
like
little bit, but he's
1.5.
working on it.
Buckfering.
Buckfering. Yes. Yes. I found my people.
I love you so much.
I'm laughing at Han.
Oh, this was a mistake.
Too late now.
First and last time on the show. But like, so Maddie and Chimney's transition from dating but not knowing it to maybe saying, okay, well, this is a thing that we go out and like actively pursue when we're ready even. And I thought it was so cute that they were doing this so smoothly. And as soon as Buck mentioned it, they're both like, oh God.
No.
Wee! And then like the transition from with our newlyweds, obviously that's a transition to married life in the beginning of their married life, and we see the transition for Mitchell and Thomas from their long lovely life to, if you believe in an afterlife, to that next step of their existence together.
Mhm.
And like, let me see, like, and there was all of them, like Ruth and Earl have this little transition from coworkers to this, like, I don't know why I like just adore these two so much, but I just do. Ruth
They're
being like, we're
perfect.
gonna be robbed again, and she's so blasé.
This woman has arguably more screen time than Tommy Kennard.
I think, and she's more interesting.
Personality.
Oh god. Better line delivery.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, it's just, there's just some, like, you know, and then of course the little robbers are transitioning to prison, which is fantastic. But like Bobby and Athena and that whole Grant Nash clan transitioning, with, especially in the beginning when you see Athena really upset about Glenn, and she has valid points for saying, if this was if my husband left me for a woman, nobody would expect me to just be okay with it and to just move on like there is nothing. And we see that transition start of this new family dynamic that they're all kind of getting used to, and Athena's kind of growth and transition from that feeling of betrayal and defensiveness to, she's so much more loose and happy and
Herself.
comfortable in herself kind of by the end of it. And I really love to see that growth for her. And I'm trying to think if there is anybody else that I missed with the transition, aside from, like I said, Buck is just the overarching,
Constantly in transition.
Well, and he's transitioning from being in a relationship, even though he hasn't really actually been in one for a while. But like, he was gaslighting himself into thinking he was into being single.
Yeah, and I think really, like I said earlier, like that passive to proactive search for who he is and who he wants and who he wants to be as a person and as a partner. He's buckfering. I love that. I'm never gonna get over it.
I was so excited about that.
He's struggling to install those patch
I love those
firmware update.
I love great puns. I love bad puns. I love all wordplay.
Yes. Oh, we're gonna get along great.
Somehow the software developers kept burying the code for him knowing he was bisexual. So I'm glad that they finally worked that out.
That was the best upgrade.
Best one yet. But Meg, I think that's with everybody in a state of transition. I think that's great. It kind of connects to me with the theme of like the reminders of past, but looking towards the future. So you kind of like, as a transition, you're kind of in that middle ground where, you know, like the call with Mitchell and Thomas, it showed all of their relationship milestones. So it's like them reminiscing on the past. And I think at one point they say like, you know, it's been a long life, short marriage. Let's continue living it, or something like that. And just a lot of these like looking toward the futures, especially with Chimney and Maddie. They have that whole conversation, which we'll talk about later, but essentially like acknowledging Maddie's past and not shying away from it, but they're looking toward the future together eventually, whenever they're ready. So I mean, I think there are some more examples. Well, Buck as well, obviously. So that kind of goes with that transition where
oh yeah,
and gratitude as well, because you're like kind of maybe honoring the past while also like deciding to move towards the future. And then I think the last little theme that I have is this feeling of not feeling pressured, specifically like in relationships, but which works for the theme of the season, which is all about pressure, thanks to the earthquake and everything. But this I see you rolling your eyes.
I would never.
but I think this is specifically in contrast to that, where like we've been seeing a lot of, pressure being put on people, like them holding burdens and everything. And this episode is very much people kind of checking in and saying, I don't want you to feel pressured about this. And I'm either communicating it or I'm thinking about it from your perspective and want to be cognizant and respectful of that. And we see that pop up a couple times. So I think that's a good connection to the pressure theme as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we
I never
finally
really know
ready
how
to
to-
talk about characters?
God. Yeah.
Okay, great. Who's cooking?
Mom and Dad?
Mom and Dad. Well, it's not so much about Bobby. He's kind of more just a supporting character. Again,
Mhm.
in this one, it's more focused on Athena, and Athena is kind of, we had this great full arc in season 1 that we were like so happy to see, but there is one aspect that we didn't see, and it's her having to grapple with incorporating Glenn into their dynamic because
Glenn.
fucking Glenn.
Hello,
Seems
Rocco.
That's Athena's like inner monologue. Like
Yeah. Oh
Rocco.
my god, we should start calling Tommy Rocco.
it just doesn't start with a T.
Why haven't we done that? I know, but we can buck the trend.
We should have done it. I feel like someone has done that already.
Has done
too.
the Rocco?
Probably.
I haven't seen it.
Most
If
likely.
I haven't seen it, it doesn't exist. Much like Buck is like, as far as I'm concerned, the world started the day I was born. Okay. Anyway, Athena. So yeah, she's back in this kind of like insecure, but mostly just angry headspace because she's like, why the fuck? And she is so valid saying, why the fuck do I have to welcome this person into my home? Because if it was a woman, no one would be telling me that I should do that. And it kind of makes me think of like I don't remember where I saw it, if it was TikTok or Twitter. Credit to whoever said it first, but they were like, I saw someone say that Athena seems low-key homophobic in season 1, in the beginning of season 2. And I was like, I mean, her husband knew he was gay the whole time, didn't tell her, then actively cheated on her, and then
left
her
her.
best friend, who's a lesbian, also cheated on her. So
She doesn't have a great experience at the moment.
it's just not that she's homophobic, it's just that the gay people in her life are not.
Destructive.
Oh,
I don't know.
I saw that tweet and it made me really irritated when they were calling her homophobic. I'm like,
She's not.
she's not. Her whole life was a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She deserves a minute to not be okay.
Mhm.
Well, her whole life is a lie, and she's coming to the terms with him being gay, and then he brings in the guy he's been dating, and it's like, you know.
During like such a terrible time too, like
Yeah.
at the hospital where her daughter
Oh.
almost like
Almost died. Literally the worst time.
Yeah. It's just.
So yeah, she's a little bitter. She's a little bitter, and I think that she's totally valid about that.
Warranted.
But I think that she gets over it pretty quickly, and I'm pretty proud of her for doing that. But I think that it was that easier for her to do that, like not just because of the place that she's in and the journey that she's taken, but because of Bobby and like the support that he gives her constantly.
Bobby in that supporting role. It helps a lot. But what's kind of interesting though is in this episode there's a little bit of like I don't really want to say tension, but there is a little bit like I don't think they're quite seeing eye to eye on everything. Like he's still unconditionally there for her, but on some things he's kind of like, well, something like seeing a different perspective.
Well, yeah, they inherently see the world differently.
But like before we kind of get into the dinner that everyone's talking about, at the Norman and Lola call, when Norman finally arrives and they're talking, and Norman's like, wait, I'm confused. Does she think I don't see her or that I don't recognize her? And Athena's all like, how the hell am I supposed to know? You can,
She's like, it's your fucking wife, man. Handle
like
your
you can
shit.
exactly. You can obviously see like she's already feeling like some sort of tension, and this is why. So she's kind of, taking, in typical Athena fashion, she's taking a little bit of the stress of her personal life, bringing it a little bit into her professional life. But when she jumps in and says like, how the hell am I supposed to know, Bobby starts to like and then he stops because she kind of goes full force. So like he was going to say something that was probably not that what she says. But then he stops himself and he just kind of like lets her go and looks on at her with like these adoring eyes, which we see so much of in this episode. Like he's just looking at her with these like big heart goo goo eyes, like, I adore you, even if I don't necessarily agree with like everything you're saying. Because it happens it happens a lot in this episode.
So like it's kind of like he sees her, he hears her, because like just to tie into like the dinner, she's visibly upset, she's visibly angry, and Bobby's definitely like clocking all of that. And then they're discussing like what happened on that call.
Yes.
And like everyone's like, oh, it's a romantic gesture.
Specifically, Michael and Bobby are like that.
Yeah. Oh, you have to appreciate the effort and whatever.
She risked it all.
The creativity.
And so it's like everyone, I guess, like it kind of feels like people were against like her, like what she was thinking about it, until Glenn says his like 5 cents and he's like, oh.
Anyway, he's correct.
And then she's totally fine with him too, which I think is...
Yeah.
She's like, oh, I guess you get to have rights. Would you like some wine?
But I think the direction I was going with that was like Bobby is mentally taking notes of things she says, her moods, or like because he stops himself from saying whatever he was about to say. And then he also does that grand gesture at the end. So I think it's just like the fact that he's mentally taking notes and just like,
anticipating her needs.
That's another thing that we see a lot in this episode. Anticipating needs.
Bobby's awareness of Athena is something that's really beautiful to kind of witness, because he is very present in that relationship with the two of them. And even if he doesn't agree with her, he doesn't come at her. He's very much it's not me versus you, it's you and I versus the problem when he's trying to communicate with her. And I think with Athena's temperament and personality, she needs Bobby's like steadying, mostly unshakable kind of just support there for her, and to bring
stable
her back
ground
down. Yeah. He's like, I'm describing him very boringly, but I love Bobby. He's so stable.
We all love Dad around here.
We do.
Love Dad. Dad's not boring. He's got the most interesting backstory.
Oh God, he's so tragic.
He's also got jokes.
He does.
Right, Rachel?
I love him.
As the resident dad joker here, yes.
Oh, I love dad jokes.
I like his gallows humor.
Worst possible moments. So funny.
And when he's a hater of the victims they're helping, that's my favorite Bobby mode. It's like, actually, you're so stupid, I can't be professional.
Goodbye, Shay's Army.
I hear I hear it's nice in Scottsdale. Was that what it was from season 7? When they're like jackhammering at the bachelor mansion. They're like, you don't understand, this is a rental.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to go film in Arizona. And he's like, I hear it's great there.
Oh my god.
Gets the jackhammer.
Unreal. But yes, Meg, I think that's a great point. Like he, like as her support system, he provides so much. Like he's a grounding force, right? Like every adjective that we can come up for him that's like stable, rock solid, grounding.
Yeah, but he's not a doormat.
An earthquake can't shake him.
He's definitely not a doormat.
Which I just
that's
like
Buck.
That.
Oh,
baby Buck. But yeah, I don't know. It cracked me up so much at that dinner scene with Glenn because she was so mad and so just not wanting to be there. And then Glenn is the only one at the table that agrees with her and doesn't see the romance of it. And he is correct. But also, I'm not a pragmatic person either. I think she was insane and I would be never. But I just loved that he was just like, I didn't like it at all. I think you should charge him with everything. And Athena charged that woman with every single thing that she could find.
She threw the book at her.
Everything. And then she's like, well, the one person who agrees with me, that's fine. Now you're welcomed into the circle. And I just it made me chuckle.
At least someone with some common sense around here.
Yeah.
Someone with a brain cell showed up for dinner. They get to have wine. No one else does.
No one else. Want to go from
no
that
wine
really
for you.
The really fake greeting.
Where she was yelling about, like, no one would make me do this, like, if it was a woman, and then immediately turned, oh, hi, Michael. I was like, they totally heard that.
Slapped on that fake smile.
And the way she goes immediately into that fake smile, like, Angela Bassett's, like, comedic chops are so underplayed, but when they're utilized, it's done so well. Like that. But yeah, like, do you think Glenn was being a suck up or did he actually?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but I think he actually thought that because it's like, well, obviously Michael has a type.
Yeah.
But Athena has a type too because they're both
it.
the romantics.
But I also feel like part of it, like maybe he was like kind of trained, like, like before they got there, they were he was kind of like prepped by Michael a little bit.
Maybe.
That's what I was thinking.
Do we know anything about Glenn, like what he does? Or
no, because they break up anyway. So I mean,
I think a lot of it, like I joke about the suck up thing, but I feel like she was the hurdle that Glenn knows he's going to have to try and overcome because the kids ultimately just want their dad to be happy. And Bobby's just here for a good time.
He's just happy to be there.
Bobby's just happy to be invited. And Michael obviously wants him there, but Athena's really the one that he has to try and win over after essentially stealing this woman's husband. So is arguing with her at her own dinner in her own home
in his best interest?
In his best interest?
No,
absolutely not. And he may very well believe. He seemed to actually believe what he was saying.
Yeah.
But there's the ulterior motive of let me see if I can try and get in good because he's already so far behind.
I also thought it was a good way to utilize explaining why what she did was so problematic because like, yes, it's funny, ha ha, but also these are all the things that could have gone wrong.
Yeah.
And these are all the resources she was taking away from other people because she didn't want to have a damn conversation. And I feel like that was something that's like important for those kids to hear.
Lola makes great choices.
Yeah. And also for the audience, just to be like, you know what I mean? Because this is like, everyone's like,
do this.
A fantastical kind of world. And like when they present things like this, like at face value, you're like, haha, that's just hilarious. Oh, she's going to jail, whatever, and you don't think about it again. So I liked that they explained why, like, Athena's point of view, so that she didn't have to.
Yeah.
And I also really did love, like, when she's listing off all of these things that they're charging her with. It the whole, like, assault with a deadly weapon or whatever, and everyone's just like, who did she assault? And Athena's all just like, Buck. obviously. And it just seemed
serious about it.
Yeah, it seemed like she was like protecting her stepson.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. I was like
On the scene, yeah.
on the scene, but no, I just felt like there was like a very specific reaction, like very, I don't know, maybe it's just crumbs.
No,
Well, there were
keep
crumbs.
going.
Just that there were like some really yeah, there were just like some real crumbs where I was like, oh yeah, Buck is I mean, we already know Buck is Bobby's son, but like now it's like Athena, like Bobby and Athena's son.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
It's this, we're seeing this transition of the Grant family with Athena and Michael and the kids and Bobby and Glenn, but it's also this transition of, from the other way as well, like that familial transition. So like going the other way. So like Athena is kind of basically officially bringing Buck in to the fold a little bit because he is Bobby's pseudo son. And this was her way of protecting.
I also think that he really grew on her and she feels really protective about him.
Exactly. So like they've come so far.
Yeah, I think she was the only one who was really taking the threat to Buck seriously, including Buck in that whole situation. Like Bobby, like when she says like he's talking to her, and Bobby's like, well, that'll either go well or the other way, and is fairly unconcerned about it. Even he says Buck felt bad about her pointing a gun at him and getting in trouble for it, and so Buck doesn't even. I mean, we know Buck doesn't value
his life,
himself at all, especially right now in this point in the show.
No.
But Athena, I think, was personally offended that they were surprised she charged Lola with assault because it was Buck.
Yeah.
Like she's like, Avi, yeah, you can't just point your gun at people and get away with it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was,
and it wasn't even like, I mean, like pointing your gun in any manner, but it was the fact that she had already shot the gun.
Yeah.
And then was, had it pointed directly at him.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I know Bobby was concerned. Everybody was concerned, but the way Bobby kind of brushed it off a little bit, like it could go one way or the other. Like, yes, it's also funny, but I think that does kind of go back to what we talked so much about it, like at the end of season 1 and even a little bit at the beginning of this season, where the 118 still doesn't necessarily see Buck for who he is now.
I said, when are we doing that episode?
Oh, I don't know, sometime. But like they still don't see Buck for kind of who he is now. They still see him in that like prior to that,
steal a fire truck to go fuck Snake Woman.
Prior to that transition, right? So they're kind of a little behind the times of they have not updated their software for him yet in their minds.
I mean, it's partly his fault too, because just like his father, he's not very open about personal things.
No. Sorry, that was starting to get into a little bit of Buck, but I did just want to point out one more thing with Bobby and Athena when they're preparing for the dinner, and Athena, is just like very much on the defensive. So going back to what we were saying, how Bobby is this grounding force, but he's also I think one of them says like Bobby's acting like a human shield, and it's like, are you shielding Mom or are you shielding Glenn? And I just think that's really really hilarious. Both. Because he's also just like so happy to wait a second. Sorry, brain blast. He's so happy and comfortable to put himself in this line of fire and act as a human shield. And what does he do at the end of the season but exactly that? Oh. Sorry. I love when we brain blast during recording. Brings me much joy. I did not think of that until just now. So, so that's foreshadowing. Proud of myself. And then, one last thing at the, I don't think I really wrote it down, correctly, but at the newlywed crash, when Bobby is talking to Athena, what is it that he says to her? Like something about like what God has put together, no man can
Let
pull
no man
asunder.
Let
Yeah.
no man
Put asunder.
put asunder.
I
It's
needed to
what
look
God
into
has
that.
put together. Let no man tear apart.
Tear.
That's what that means. Yeah.
Mhm. He's such a dork.
He's such like a. It's like Catholicism is like his fandom. Like I don't.
I also think it's so funny
Yeah,
that
his
Athena was like,
hyperfixation.
"Wow, I never would have thought you'd think of tow trucks." Like, well, why not?
Yes, this piece of scripture
He's
inspired
so
me to do
weird.
Oh my god.
But
I love you, Dad.
But I was like, I thought that was really like a great quote, but I was trying to figure out a way to tie that into like the grander scheme of something with like relationships, but I couldn't quite
Mhm.
tie that together yet. if anyone had like, wants to pull that thread.
I mean, it's basically like, the Christian way of saying they're a set, do not separate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so
It'll
that
tie
makes
to
sense.
Thomas and Mitchell also.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Well, yeah, because it's like all they wanted to do was go together.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that works as like that transition.
Anything, and that was so beautiful. I love that. They just
Yeah.
wanted to everything they did. They just wanted to do together, and I'm like,
Kind of like Maddie and Chimney.
Chimney.
Unless we had did anyone else have anything to say about
Bobby and Athena? Last
Okay.
call?
last call at the karaoke bar?
Oh my god.
I'm keeping you.
Speaking of people who want to do everything together.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Maddie and Chimney.
Speaking of people who want to do everything together, Maddie and Chimney have like really developed a very close bond and friendship, and is kind of in the span of what we saw her meet him in 206 in Dosed, and this is episode 8 in the span of 2 episodes. They are besties, or more.
Buckley's move fast. What can we say?
So true. But we really like, it's such a pleasure to see, I think, especially after the Dosed, when Maddie was struggling so much with her past, and you see her transition into a much happier self when Chimney's around, and vice versa. Like Chimney is so happy when he's around her, and they've like just developed this really lovely rapport, this effortless relationship for them. And they already have like set routines, and I'm just like, what has been the time jump between these last 2 episodes? Because it's like they go to karaoke bar all the time, they have buff Fridays like weekly, and he knows that they always forget her hot mustard, so he made it for her, and just like it's very routine in a way that's comfortable, but in like a wonderful way for both of them, right? They're just kind of a perfect pair.
Mm-hmm. They're really making it, you know.
Oh. Yeah, they are. And it's because they're like actively, if you want to talk about like passively versus actively, choosing things, I think it's because they are actively like choosing each other and choosing to move forward with them, the other at their side.
mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of transitioning, it's there, and we talked about was it Dosed? When the fuck do they meet?
In Dosed?
No, they I can't remember the episode. They met when Maddie moved and got her apartment.
That's
Right.
Dosed.
That was Dosed? Yeah.
That's Dosed,
So that's
okay.
when they met.
But like we talked about in that episode, how they're both kind of like in a similar stage.
Yeah.
Mhm.
in their life and that's why like when they finally do meet and they click, like when you meet someone and, and you
Yeah.
just click.
Yeah, we do know.
Yeah. It just, progresses so quickly because they are just on the same page because they're both transitioning, from different things, but very
Mhm.
much both are like determined to like and set on like moving forward and making a life that they want for themselves.
They're turning a page to like the same kind of chapter in
Yeah.
their lives, so it just like works out that it's in tandem.
Well, and I love the ease that there is between the two of them. And I think so much of it is because they weren't like dating or didn't realize that they were dating. And so Maddie didn't have her guard up nearly as much as I think had Chimney been actively
trying to pursue her.
romantically pursue her rather than be
Yeah.
like, I just want to get to know you. And when he tells her that I am not afraid of your past, I recognize that it is something that happened and that is something that we're going to deal with, but your stuff doesn't scare me. It doesn't
Yeah.
make me want to run away. And I think that is something that frankly everyone wants to hear from a potential partner, that all you're weird, and this is not, Maddie's not weird. It's not a Maddie weirdness because obviously she went through serious trauma, but all of that doesn't scare me. I want all of it. I want all of you, every ugly, scary part of you. And I think that's when Maddie starts to get a little bit nervous and scared about like, well, when I'm ready, because that's big. But we can see that Chimney is very much like Bobby in this sense where he is just clocking all these things. He knows her drink order. He knows the food she likes. He makes her hot mustard because the place always forgets. And I just, that goes to that feeling seen situation too. And I love that they're simultaneously going extremely slow and very quick. They haven't caught up to what they actually are to each other until Buck of all people. It's like, you're dating each other.
I know.
It's like, what is
that is wildly kind of the exact same thing, and maybe we can bring this back up later in Slow Burn. Oh, were you going to do that anyways?
No.
Oh.
That's just my reaction to anything where I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about it in Slow Burn, or oh, this is going to be relevant
later. Yeah.
In the future. Interesting.
I also just want to like add of them being on the same page. Oh, being on the okay, hold on. Okay, so what I was going to say is like I just love that, I said this and I think in a previous, and probably in Dosed, where I was like, it was just like the perfect time for them to meet each other and like go on this journey together. And then I think we were referencing how they were also on the same page and all of that. And, you really see that when he goes to dispatch and talks to her and how, there's a moment where they're talking about like not pressuring each other or him not pressuring her, and she's like, yeah, you've never pressured me. I just think that's so
that's
they
a
were
beautiful
obviously
moment.
so on the same page. And then like I think that kind of also ties into like the gratitude because like she probably has some sort of gratitude for Chimney for being such this like
a grounding
considerate
figure
person and grounding figure.
That's really beautiful. Chimney really is essentially being the Bobby to Maddie's Athena in this as well, which I think is so fun. When we keep bringing up Dose, but that's because where they met. But in that episode, Chimney was paralleled so much to Athena because one, they were the only two that weren't dosed. But like Athena was also that grounding force for Bobby in contrast. So it's that like equal partnership and to kind of have Chimney be parallel to both of those, it stands to reason, like from a narrative standpoint, that Maddie will also be paralleled to one or both of them whenever Chimney needs someone to lean on, which we will see happens at some point this season. So it really is just like establishing their relationship, friendship at the moment, but their relationship as something that, you know, will kind of stand the test of time, stand, you know, different trials and tribulations.
Well, I'm just so excited there's a couple where nothing ever is going to be happen to them or go wrong. It's just all sunshine.
Oh,
All
The time?
rainbow, all nonstop, just no issues.
and if there were ever two characters who ever deserved that, it would be them.
And a redo of their wedding.
God.
They do deserve that. Ugh, makes me frustrated. But can we also mention their karaoke duet of all time with Islands in the Stream, and just like how indicative that is of their characters individually, but also how well they mesh together. And you can also kind of see a little bit of that transition there when they're singing. Also, just like, by the way, they
sound really good.
They sound so good. like Jennifer Love Hewitt and Kenneth Choi, like they sound fantastic together. Please sing some more, specifically in duets. But you kind of see, like, at one point when Maddie puts like her arm around Chimney, and he's just kind of like, oh, like that's one of like that's like a little oh moment, like, oh, this might mean something. And okay, now I remember what I was going to say. I do love that they kind of aired their feelings for each other without explicitly airing their feelings for each other, but like they're both still on the same page about it, because they hinted at it transparently enough that they both know where the other stands, even though they're not yet really ready for that in like consciously, even though that's basically what they're doing subconsciously. But that's a really, I really loved that, because it was kind of like a, what are we to each other, without being so like, are we friends? Are we dating? Like,
what are we?
They're islands in the stream.
Exactly.
They rely on each other.
Perfectly said.
I should write songs.
You should. I really love that. So yeah, that is really they are each other's second chance. Right? Which Maddie also says in the closing monologue, like, people can learn from the mistakes that they've made and grow into better and more complete human beings. And sometimes it just starts with a second chance. So I think we've also talked about like some self-actualization in this season as well. And I feel like, you know, what we've seen from Chimney from season 1 to now, and Maddie from the beginning and of this season, where she, you know, is basically on the run, but has decided to start her life anew, start that like second chance at life. They are reaching that like self-actualization, and that is also why they work well together, because they are, again, they're at the same point and they're on the same page, and they see eye to eye, and they see each other and just click. How many times can we say that? We've said
I think we've said it enough. Can we do Buck now?
Yeah.
Hannah is chomping.
Yeah, it's also 10:20, so I'm trying to like,
I know.
Yeah. Because we're going to be talking about this bitch for a hot minute. Affectionate. Tone indicators.
Be my guest.
Yeah, so anyway, talk about the the titular character, I guess, of this episode, Mr. Buckley. It's just the first hand embarrassment that I experienced from this man.
The first-hand embarrassment.
Firsthand.
Not secondhand. First hand.
Firsthand. But yeah, so he is he's trying really hard to move forward, but he's kind of adrift at sea. Like unmoored. He's trying to really I don't want to continue that analogy.
Reel it in.
Trying to stay afloat.
Well, he's trying to stay afloat, and he's trying to find a place to anchor himself again. But like in that journey, he's trying to find himself, but for some reason, this man is one of those people that cannot be by himself. He cannot be left alone with his thoughts for a single second. So it's not like he left, and finally made that decision for himself to move on from Abby, but immediately is getting involved with women again. And I just feel like he was I need to find out who I am without you, but he doesn't do that.
He never said, find out who I am on my own.
A very important distinction.
Sure. But anyway, now that we have the thesis statement of what Buck is going through, right off the bat, we see Taylor Kelly again. She's at the highway scene, and the part of the quote that she says sends me, which is desperately trying to get the attention of somebody. I was like, well, this is about Buck. Because he needs attention to live, right? And he has been starving, right, romantically. So even though he's I need to find out who I am without you, he's also desperately seeking that connection that he has been since we've met him. He wants
very beginning
that emotional intimacy. So he's still searching for it, and he really needs somebody to pay him attention, and that's going to be important for later.
I think he's terrified to be by himself. Like he said, he can't be left alone with his own thoughts. He can't stop to examine, because then he's going to have to think about all of the stuff that he's been running away from since he was a kid, since his sister gave him that Jeep, and he ran off, and he did it under the guise of trying to find himself, but he's really just running away from everything. And letting anybody get close enough to damage him the way he's already been damaged. So I think he's just, the idea of sitting with his thoughts is just so terrifying. So he's got to run out and try and find, like you said, that attention and that validation, but without any self-reflection at all. Except to say that he's 2.0.
Maybe not quite. Yeah.
Yeah. But the only other thing that I really am taking away for his arc from that scene is she also, oh my god, Lola's
Lola.
you don't even know who I am anymore, which, as I said, was a theme. And that we're coming back to Buck doesn't know who he is.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Because he doesn't want to do that. Just like Meg said, he doesn't actually want to do that. So instead of focusing on himself, he's trying to focus on his relationships and how Buck 2.0 is going to be someone
different.
Who, yes, Buck 2.0 is, this person who is about relationships and not about one night stands. And because he discovered that he really wants that emotional intimacy, not physical intimacy per se.
I think he thinks Buck 2.0 might be the Buck that is lovable. Without having to do that examine, Buck 2.0, that one might be the one that someone loves and sticks around for. Because he's never felt that really from anybody, but he, like you said, like I was saying, he doesn't want to think about it too hard. But Buck 1.0 got left by everybody. So Buck 2.0, maybe
not.
maybe that one will be lovable. And I'm just like, you're the worst. I love you so much.
He's looking for what Maddie just found,
Yes.
which is for someone to show up, like plop into his life, pursue him, and, you know, look past all of the things that he doesn't like about himself or the things in his past and love him. I fucking hate saying it, but love him anyway. Love him for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and he's like, that's what he's waiting for to happen.
Like, he really is waiting for someone to see him for who he is, even though, one, like, he doesn't even truly see himself for who he is. Like, he doesn't know who he is. So, like, on that aspect, like, how can he expect someone else to come in and know exactly who he is, like, if you don't even know yourself? But on the second point, you know, like, he keeps conflating these people who don't see him for people who do. And
because if he can find a morsel, like a crumb, that's why he latched onto Abby, because he was not doing well and she noticed and she went out of her way to pursue him in a way that made him feel seen and cared for. Well, and he's looking for another scrap.
And him and Maddie, like looking at the siblings, it's so interesting, especially when you look at what Thomas was saying about love doesn't find you, you make it. And that's where they are. Buck is waiting to be found, and Maddie is making that life. She's making that love. She's making what Buck wants. And I think
she's building it.
She's building it. And I think Buck seeing them build it together is kind of part of what, between that and Thomas and Mitchell, I think, is kind of what starts to kick him into that gear of, oh, I can't just sit around here and wait for somebody to come and fix me. Oh, baby boy.
Yeah, like, I think you really see, like, that those are the transitions, to go back to your theme, because at the scene on the highway or the freeway or whatever, when he's talking to Lola and he's trying to basically talk her down, he's coming from this, which is
the fact that
a choice.
He was like, oh, I can relate to you. Let me tell you, like, what happened to me, because, like, we'll relate, and then you'll understand why you should, like, not do what you're doing. And that her takeaway from that was, like, kill myself.
Oh, God. Yeah, like, because he was coming at it, what I was going to say was, he was coming at it from a place of grief. Yeah. And, you know, and he is typically this very, like, optimistic. Both of the Buckley siblings are very just, like, kind of eternally optimistic, which Chimney does say to Maddie earlier, or at the bar. But Buck is not feeling his optimistic self because he's in this transition, this process of grieving this relationship that has already withered and died without him knowing. So he's trying to catch up to it, I guess, a little bit, and, you know, look at the past, but also try to move forward. But he's kind of convincing himself as much as he's trying to convince Lola as well. And it works kind of, but not, like, in the way that you would really want it to, which again goes back to Glenn saying, like, they got lucky. But, you know, Buck, Mr. I like our chances. He's just good luck Buck, just kind of generally. And then he tries to, like, course correct, but he doesn't even really know exactly how to attack this kind of head on, because he sees himself in Lola, because they both don't know who they are anymore. But, like, at the end, he's like, Bobby says, "What did you say to her?" And Buck, who saw all of this happen and kind of end up, like, happily instead of tragically. He's like, oh, I told her everything's gonna be okay. So you see that optimism try to like starts creeping back in a little bit more, but it's not really until like the very end that I think he chooses to go back to like his or he's trying to embrace his like optimistic nature again. But it's still not coming to him as easily, I think.
No, because I think he has a hard time being optimistic about people being interested in him for things other than his body.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, which Lola also comments on when she's like, oh yeah, I'm sure you get ignored all the time, which kind of brings us to think about Buck 1.0, season 1 Buck. Anyways, like we've talked about, like he was very much using his appearance and his outward like attractiveness to his benefit, but like that's not seeing the all of him. You know, that's just seeing the surface.
The first connection we see him have with someone in that fire truck, at the end of it, he is still trying to make a further connection. And she's just like, I just wanted to sleep with you, but thanks. Have a good one. And then Taylor does the same thing to him.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that later.
Yes, we will, because that's the scene dissection. But yeah, so he doesn't have much of value, you know, he has self-worth issues. So trying to be optimistic about things when it comes to his self-worth it's going to be really hard for him to do. But he is doing that thing where he just makes a decision and goes full steam ahead without fully thinking it through. So that's what he does, like, ultimately. I mean, like, he's at the scene with Mitchell and Thomas, and he hears and he sees this like moving relationship, right? And he's like, oh my God, that's what love is. And he's like, oh, he said you don't find it, you make it. Well, I have to make it, obviously. And like, but he's taking that to mean that like he specifically has to be putting all of the work in to make it happen. Yep. And that he's not thinking about how it's supposed to be two people who want the same
equal
thing.
Partnership.
Equal partnership.
Making it together.
Which is what Chimney and Maddie are doing.
Yeah.
Which is what Bobby and Athena are doing.
Because Buck has already tried to make it with Abby being the only one to put anything into it.
Because he was taking another piece of advice poorly. Where it's like, you just need to step into it with her. And now he keeps doing that in relationships too. It's like he always gets relationship advice that like is good or could be good, but he just takes it the wrong way. And then he's just like, he's still doing this shit to this day.
Yeah, it's like he's so close, but he still misses the mark. And I think seeing Chimney and Maddie kind of like make that happen in front of his own eyes when he's all of a sudden this third wheel that he didn't realize, like when they're at the karaoke bar and Chimney tells him, you know, oh, Maddie's coming, and the faces that he makes in that scene are so funny and very just like brother sort of thing. Like, just
gross.
Yeah.
First of all, ew.
It's like my sister, and also like, huh?
My sister and my friend?
Since when? Like, what is happening? Did I miss like a chapter or a vital update, and just kind of like ends up being front row seat to watching Chimney and Maddie just like develop this relationship in front of his eyes. And even when the three of them have dinner at Chimney's, and it's like Buff Fridays or whatever, and he's just like there watching this happen in front of him, and
right in front of his salad. Sorry. I'm going to show
don't be
myself
sorry.
out.
No. Don't. It's just so funny because he wants to look towards the future and he's seeing them look towards the future with each other, but it does not compute in this software patch or update or upgrade or whatever he's on right now, that like he doesn't have to be the only one to put in that effort.
Yeah, and it also doesn't mean that you have to look through your current Rolodex of women you know.
Yeah. Well, I think he's being left behind. He has such abandonment issues, man.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to Maddie. And like, I think seeing all of these people, like seeing Bobby
Like,
and
move
Athena
on.
moving on in their life,
Mhm.
and seeing Maddie who went through so much more trauma than Buck did in their relationship wise, and seeing her move forward and putting herself out there. And I think you're right. He doesn't think that it's togetherness, because I don't think he's ever had that. And I think it's so cliche to say, but I don't think he loves himself enough to think that he is worth anybody putting in the effort to create that with him. And
which is why he assumes that he's the one who has to do it.
Unbeknownst
I'm the one
to
that has
him,
to step into their world.
I
I'm
think
the one
he's
who has to build
already
it.
building that. He just doesn't see it yet.
Yeah, he doesn't know.
He doesn't know it yet.
I don't know.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Couple minutes.
Because I have things to say about that.
I think we all do.
Oh, I'm sure we do. So I think I was just going to give like one or two comments about the coffee date with Allie. I have some more in another section. But
always forget about
specifically, he turns her down at first because he's like, because he slept with Taylor and then immediately felt shitty about it, because he says like, oh, I felt like I disrespected you and I didn't want you to feel used, whatever. But I feel like that's how he's just projecting. This entire episode is just projection station. So yeah, he's projecting. So like that's how he feels. And that's the reason why he doesn't want to do the one night stands anymore. So he's like, well, the obvious solution is to turn this into a relationship. So
just pendulum swing all the way the other way.
Right. So when Allie calls him, right, and he hadn't gone back to see... Wait, did he go to see Taylor again before that?
It's just the van.
Oh, yeah, he had seen her before that. But then he is like, oh, that's love. So he has that revelation, right, that he has to make it. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to call Allie back. Because I think he does realize that, like, Taylor, I mean, she basically was straight up like, I don't want a relationship. And, like, without saying I don't want a relationship. So he was like, okay, I'll call Allie back.
These men need to stop dating people they meet on calls.
Well, and he has that whole conversation with her where he's like, okay, I just need to make sure that you don't feel like you're, like, indebted to me. And we'll get into the rest of that later. But... Just two little notes. He showed up wearing black, which they like rarely put him in. So he's lost. He is lost. He does not know what the fuck he's doing. And the irony of the closing song is so funny to me. Because like it's supposed to be this like, you know, optimistic, upbeat rom-com
everlasting
like, ending.
love.
Right? And like they do the montage of the other people, and everlasting love totally makes sense for them. But like it's so discordant on purpose, I'm sure, with Buck and Allie on a date.
Well, and Maddie's montage.
Well, yeah, I was going to touch upon Maddie's montage, but I was also like going to touch upon like what Allie was wearing too, because like, so he's in black, she's in white, and then that ties into so there's like a, you know, that's your typical yin and yang. There's going to be differences. And then you have Maddie who's like all of these great epic love stories and then tragedy. And it's just the shot of them.
Right over.
Which foreshadowing, flash forward to what they are. Like they were also kind of opposites because they kind of, I think, if I remember correctly, it's not that they wanted different things, but like she had a different perspective. and didn't want to be in a relationship with someone that's going to be in danger all of the time because she couldn't do that. So it was kind of like
just like super weird thing to say when
To
you
a
pursued a relationship with
firefighter.
someone that you met
saving your life
when you almost died.
Uh-huh.
What do you think they do? That was a one-time thing?
Well, I mean,
So
I
weird.
can get where she's coming from though, because
Yeah.
the theoretical of it and the idea
The
of,
reality.
of that relationship versus the reality of the relationship, I think is something that, like, she's not wrong for saying that
Right.
this is not something that she can handle. It was really shitty that she did it right after he got
His
hurt
leg. Uh-huh.
Mhm.
and desperately needed somebody to stick by him when
She pulled a Tatiana
things-
too.
yeah,
Oh
when
my god.
when things were really bad for him. So, like, her reasoning was valid. Her timing was just awful.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, it really shows that, like, and kind of to what Sil said about, like, the yin and yang, like,
mhm.
they were not on the same page from the beginning, especially because he kind of, like, turned her down first and then, like, called her back up and, you know, this kind of, like, flip-flop, like, they're not
He did that with Abby too.
Yeah.
These women do
Yeah.
not know what they're getting into.
Because he's not on the same page with anyone at the moment. Like,
No.
it like all of the factors, like from the music to the monologue to what they're wearing, it just like illustrates this idea that they're not going to end up together.
Mhm.
Like, it's not
Mhm.
going to last. So, like, why?
Just thinking of all of our themes from the last episode.
Yeah. Which I honestly, I think that is kind of like pulled over a little bit.
Mhm.
I was just saying, I remember I was pretty excited when this first aired, and the coffee date was with Allie, and it wasn't another Taylor hookup. I just remember because
I mean,
like I said,
yeah.
I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know what was going to happen with them, but I
Yeah.
was just so happy that he was
It's an
trying
upgrade.
to find something more meaningful. They had a coffee date. They weren't meeting in a bar. They weren't meeting in a club or
It's
someplace.
like growth.
Like,
And they were talking the entire day.
Yeah,
Or,
and-
up
and-
until the night.
yeah, and they
Mhm.
and it felt more grown up. And like hindsight, obviously, we know a lot more.
Right.
But I just remember watching it and thinking, like, oh, he's making a step in the right direction.
Mm.
Which it's a baby step.
Aw.
Yeah.
A baby step
It
is
is,
still
though.
a step.
Yeah.
It's
A smidge.
movement. It's what?
Oh, I just said it's a smidge.
A smidge.
A smidge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Smidge forward.
And like it's nice because you see him, it looks like they're connecting on some sort of level that's like
Mm-hmm.
not in the same way that he connected with Taylor.
Well, and they had banter, and it was cute, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, she
That's true.
She kind of gave him some shit in there, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So that's my last thought ever.
But yeah, speaking of Taylor, let's get into the scene dissection.
Oh boy.
Hey! Where's the fire?
We're going to talk about both Taylor scenes, the bar, and the news van. Or parking lot, I guess I should say.
Yeah, it's outside the news station, I would think.
Mm.
Which he just
What?
he just pulled up to the news van, parked randomly somewhere. I'm assuming the news van is in front of the news station because that's where he met her.
Yeah, because the
last
cameraman
time.
comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
They
Again.
had just gotten back from a story she had to cut together.
So yeah, we go from Buck saying I don't want to do this thing. I don't want to be Buck 1.0, but he's trying to talk to Chimney about it, who I think at this point is still like the worst person he could possibly try to talk to about this, because Chim still doesn't inherently like understand Buck underneath the masks, right?
Yeah.
So And he's also like, oh, looking at him like, oh, you're attractive. Oh, poor you. There's like women who want to sleep with you. Like, oh, sounds terrible.
It's like Chimney 1.0 comes back up again a little bit.
Popping out a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, he's like that's ruminating in his head, and he's like, I feel like spiraling a tiny little bit, like watching Chimney and his sister.
Oh yeah, you can see it like kind of eating at him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's a little frustrated and irritated, and just frankly, I think bewildered that is even happening at all.
Mm-hmm.
But also kind of frustrated that, like, you know, Maddie's only been here for how many months, and she's moving on, maybe it looks like, and here he is just kind of like in that stasis still, or like trying to move on from that stasis.
So then Taylor sends him a drink, and they have like, trying to look at it objectively, but like weird conversation.
She treats
Well, she's laying it on so thick.
Well, yeah.
It's
Well,
And
yeah,
then
she likes to troll those brick and ladder or badge and ladder bars for a scoop
and other things, I guess.
And other things.
Rachel, what were you gonna say?
She treats him in their conversation like he is a story that she's going to get to the bottom of. She asks him all of these very reportery questions, you know, these like follow-up questions that, again,
that's why it was so awkward.
Makes
okay,
right
it.
Because it's not like a natural conversation.
It's not a conversation.
It's
exactly.
It's an interview
where she gives nothing.
Exactly. Right? She gives nothing, but she is giving the appearance that she's so interested and intrigued with whatever,
and he's getting
he is.
Attention paid to him, and he is so starving for the attention.
It's the same thing that we talked about in Dosed, where he thinks that he's being seen by her, but she's just seeing what he can do for her, and it's not the same thing.
And you would think that he learned his lesson in Dosed, but he's stupid.
Well, and I mean, Taylor, to be clear, Taylor's good at her job. She is a good reporter.
She is.
That is part of the job, is getting people to talk about themselves and they say things that they may not be wanting to say. And like
all I have to say to, like, I think what Han was trying to say also, I just don't get, like, it's more like a personal anecdote. I just don't understand, like, why. No, I do know why. I do know why he's attracted to her. It's just like,
I mean, she's objectively very attractive.
Yeah, I get why. But like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, she showed you, like, who she is as a person. Like, why did you go back there? Like, why?
I think
he liked the attention.
There's the attention. He's like, I already know her, so I'm not meeting her in a bar. And I think, like I said, she's an opportunist. She's very good at what she does, and very good at making him feel seen. And that's all he wants. That's all. Like, he's in a really vulnerable, really crappy place, and she takes advantage of it. And then he goes to her feeling like he took advantage of her.
Whereas the other way around,
right?
Not really.
I mean,
never mind.
They're both adults. They're both like, you know, and it wasn't like anything taking advantage or in that kind of way, but she saw her opportunity and she took it. And it's hard, like, we don't like her as people because as a person, because we see what she does. But
yeah, I also think Buck started doing this thing because it was like she did, like Sil said, she showed her ass, just like with her whole chest. She was like, this is who I am, and like,
you don't have
there's
to
nothing
like
stupid about that. Like, you don't have to like it, but like, this is my job. I'm good at it, and
that way she's able to wash her hands of any other thing she does to him.
Right, and so like, before she did that whole rant, Buck was like, that's a stupid job, right? So I feel like at that point, we talked about this in that episode. In Dosed, how he was like ready to write her off, and then she did the whole thing, kind of made him feel guilty, and then I feel like he's building this person that she is in his head that's not accurate.
Not Buck.
Yeah, I feel like she is very good at her job, and she knows how to wield it to her advantage because she is an opportunist. But it's also interesting because she's one of the only people that Buck actually, like, he's talked to Bobby about his, relationship with Abby or his romantic exploits and everything like that, but not a lot of like personal information. But Taylor is kind of like one of these first people where he is like divulging more personal information that we know he doesn't do. But somehow she just like pulls this out of him, and I think that is why he feels like she is so interested in him as opposed to like the story that he can give her. And that makes me sad because it's not.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to say she took advantage of him because again, there was clear consent from adults, but
she's just an opportunist.
He was very vulnerable and got done saying, "I don't want to do this thing."
Yeah,
but like there was this sexual tension between them in Dosed where it was like, "Get her." What did he say? Did he say get a room?
Yeah, he said get a room.
Yeah. Cameraman said get a room, and then that's like he like bites his lip or something. Right, and that's the end. So like
it's that weird like ending shot where they're just kind of like staring at each other. Like,
it's kind of like, do you walk away from?
You like have and then you were like,
it's like,
okay, bye,
bye. Like what? How do you leave that conversation just like, I hate you, I hate you back, see you later?
So this is just like the I guess the fulfilling the loop of whatever the fuck that was that started, right? And impulse control never met her. Evan Buckley
too restrained.
Oh my god,
which didn't last
too
long.
restrained.
Out the window.
And I was like, she is not. I don't want to say taking advantage, but she is like
taking advantage of the opportunity.
She knew how to play him. She knew how to play him.
And she clocked from just watching him during Dosed that this man has no impulse control.
Well, what killed me really was when he was feeling like he was so disrespectful and such a jackass about the whole thing and called himself a pig. And like, I don't think this was something that she was necessarily doing because I don't think she knows that he was projecting so much of it to it. And she's like, I am a grown woman. I knew what I was doing. You do not have to worry about me. And Buck taking all of that as, why do you care? I do not care about you or how you're feeling after this encounter. So what's going on? Now let's get back to it. And I don't think that was intentional on Taylor's part. I don't want to just like shit on her and give her evil motives that she doesn't like deserve. But I think in her mind, she was like, I'm going to ease this guy's worries, let him know that he's not like, I knew what I was doing. I'm a big girl. I don't feel like he used me or anything like that. Not realizing that all of that stuff is just kind of
how he feels about himself.
His own feelings about the
I
situation.
felt like she was trying to reassure him, but in her Taylor, her own way.
Yeah, which is,
of course,
which is, I think
which is on the side of like,
condescending.
Yeah.
And I think
it's always a smidge away from condescending.
And I think it just made him feel like he wasn't worth her wanting to get to know more. Like she was so dismissive of him wanting to make sure that she knew that he respected her, that it falls back on his self-esteem issues too. It
really does. And I think to that point of what we were saying, about how she was trying to reassure him, but it ended up kind of like backfiring because he was projecting. And I think I mentioned this in the Dose episode, like Taylor is 100% a Buck, specifically a Buck 1.0 mirror or parallel,
Mhm.
right? Like Chimney even says that at one point, I think during their dinner, when he's like, you're dating yourself. And I
but
forget
it's
exactly.
feel like it's a mirror of who people think he was.
Exactly.
Because that's not actually how he was.
Mhm.
Exactly. It is Buck projecting and kind of like thinking, well, you know, he's seeing it from this different perspective, like we've
Mhm.
mentioned at the with the themes of he's kind of like the shoe is on the other foot. So he is now in the place of you know, the people that he's slept with and kind of like realizing, oh, maybe I made them feel this way, and um Taylor is just like when she gets him a drink in the bar, she gets him what she's drinking,
Mhm.
right? Because that's just like to
Uh-huh.
mirror them together. And the news van. So when they attempt to hook up in the news van, that is so very much like when Buck took the fire truck out and hooked up with people on the job. She's working, you know.
Mhm.
I remember us saying like, how do you do that when you're working, when you're on the clock and everything like that? She's doing the very same thing. She was working on editing something, and then she gets like all of these notifications for like something that she has to follow up on, and like she's mixing that business with pleasure thing just like he did. And but she kind of does it better than Buck 1.0 because she doesn't care, or she just like puts her needs above
Yeah.
his.
She's who Buck would be if Buck was what he was projecting out into the world in season
Mhm.
1.
That's
What
exactly
people
what
were perceived,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
but
it's
not
not actually
Yeah.
the reality. So I have 2 more notes about the news van. Well, 3 more notes about the news van. The first is that he shows up wearing red
Mhm.
because he thinks that he's like, he knows
This
what
is who
he's
he's
doing,
supposed to
right?
be.
He's gonna apologize for if he made her feel bad and then ask her out, right?
Mhm.
So he's like, I'm on a mission, I'm gonna do a thing. But then when they're hooking up in the van, once the tides turn, he's
Off
down to
comes
the
the
white
shirt.
shirt. I have that he's apologizing to the wrong person because he should be apologizing to himself.
Mhm.
He should be like, because he's projecting. He doesn't like he can't even like look at those emotions in the face. But he should be apologizing to himself for doing the thing that he knew would make him feel bad.
Mhm.
And apologize for that and be like, we won't do this again because we know it's bad for us, right? And makes us feel this way.
Yeah.
Is like
Yeah.
what I feel like would have happened if he was actually on a journey to like figure out who he was, but
He's not there yet.
no.
Therapy's a little ways off.
He needs to put some space in between himself and therapy for a while.
Yeah.
But I think he is realizing that engaging in these kind of dalliances, because I use these weird words.
I love it.
Yes, your old-timey speech.
Thank
I
you.
do declare.
Oh, I do declare. Oh, clutching my pearls. Yeah, I think he's starting to understand again because he's seeing it from this different perspective that these dalliances, these connections, these hookups, whatever, is kind of like a form of self-destruction, or I don't want to necessarily go so far as to say like a form of self-harm, but do you get where I'm going with that? Like
No, it is. It is
Okay.
a form of self-harm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It literally is.
Then we'll go with that. It is kind of like a form of self-harm. And I think he is like on the brink.
It's hurting himself to get attention.
Yeah.
So that's what he's done his whole life.
He's
all he knows.
On the brink of he's on the brink of realizing that, and that is kind of why he kind of like, hold up a second, and does the switch up to go
he was like,
to Allie.
We're not going to look at that. We're going to pivot.
Well, he's like, we're not going to look at that more than that was not making me feel good. So I'm going to go in this other direction. But now I'm not going to look at that because it didn't make me feel good. And I don't want to, focus on things that don't make me feel good.
Further. Yeah.
This didn't spark joy.
Just Marie Kondoing relationships.
His Rolodex.
Spring cleaning, just no, take that out. Oh gosh. Yeah, so he, like Allie says when she shows up, that she was like reevaluating some things. So obviously, let's go in this direction instead of that direction with Taylor, which feels too similar, both because it's a mirror for him, but it also like feels very similar to the relationship with Abby. And also like they keep pointing out that it's not because she's a redhead too, and it's just like this like it's so obvious of a parallel. It's like, oh, you want to connect someone to Abby? Here's some red hair. I don't know. Like here's a very like in your face physical connection to the relationship that you just, laid to rest, and you're still being kind of haunted by it. So,
are we ready?
Scylla's ready.
I have this problem when they're not on screen together. So I'm like, I'll let Anne handle it. I mean, I know like there's the obvious, right? The whole you make it type of thing. I mean, there's so much to unpack with that because and I could be it would be too much because I would have to jump around, make all the connections. That's where I'm like, because we're in season 2.
Mm-hmm.
So Buck and Eddie are making it. They're just not realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
They choose each other. They are co-parenting. They have each other's backs. They're again, it's just so much, and I'm just like listing off like the most general things that can tie into that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd feel like we'd be here all day.
It's also directly paralleling
Chim and Maddie.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but I was going to say, no, we'll get there. But I was going to say what we just talked about with Taylor, those two scenes is directly paralleling the two scenes with Shannon from the previous episode.
Yes. Let's talk about that.
not on purpose. Okay. Coincidences don't just happen coincidentally.
Right. I said yesterday, I was like, oh yeah, this is the start where if one of them gets in a relationship, the other one has to get into a relationship. So now it's like Eddie has this thing going on with Shannon that's not concrete, and then now you have Buck exploring or opening himself up to a new relationship, which is now Allie. So now they're paired off.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just, so they're beginning that cycle of like getting together when one of them is getting together and then breaking up when the other one broke up, or told them specifically, yeah, you should break up with them.
And they're showing us directly how these women are not good matches, and what each and what Buck's looking for and what Eddie's looking for or what they need. And it's like they're not getting it. He's not getting that from Shannon, and Buck is not getting it.
No, none of them are on the same
Allie.
page.
But the things that they're talking about, they're already starting to get from each other, but like
in
they
a
don't
totally
see it.
Heterosexual bro way.
Yes.
Well, I think I also think it's so interesting when we talk about, and I kind of like that Eddie wasn't in this a bit, because I like Buck's growth to not just be tied to whatever romantic partner
Yes,
or potential that he might have. I like to
That's
see
important.
that. I miss seeing the two of them together because I am a shipper through and through. But I think it's really interesting, you know, the big theme of the transition, the second chances, Maddie's monologue at the end talking about how the best romances come from second chances and stuff like that. And Eddie is just is getting out of his really serious relationship, and we know that's how that ends, and working on closure for that. And so he's looking for his second chance, and this is so far in the future too. And Buck's second chance after his big, like, Abby was his first big relationship, his first serious relationship.
Yeah,
Well, Shannon was Eddie's.
yeah,
and yeah, exactly. And it's like, neither of their relationships ever really progress in an emotional, deep way from then on. Their second chance, their second great love that they are going to have, I don't care what anyone says, it's going to be each other. God damn it.
It has been each other.
It has been, and that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Is like they are building this life together. They are so much like Chim and Maddie in that they are practically dating and don't even necessarily realize it. Because that comfort is there so much. So I also remember being like, oh, I'm so glad Buck's not a piece of shit when, well, because there was some things like questioning, because he was such a womanizer, like if there was some homophobia and stuff, like from fans questioning when it was first airing, and
interesting.
that love and care that he showed with Thomas and Mitchell and their whole thing, and like
kind of put that to bed.
Yeah, putting that to rest and be like, okay, this is a good person, a loving.
This brings me
person.
to my 2 article quotes, if I may. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry to bring this one back up again, but I haven't brought it up since episode 1 of season 1. Okay, so we're back in the building again with Tim Minear.
Oh, God.
Where he says, it's hard to quantify why we chose to do this storyline now about Buck coming out in season 7.
Okay.
It felt like it was the right time. I just felt like Buck's story was starting to feel a little bit like a hamster wheel. I just felt like he needed a slap of something, and I think that this part of him has been coded into the show at least since season 2. So he's been the showrunner is saying, I have intentionally been writing him this way, coding him this way, you are all correct, since season 2, at least. And he's like, I probably, like, that wording of that to me implies also season 1, but, like, not as intentional. So
it's giving the you are not crazy.
Yes. Tweet. So he says, I don't think it comes out of nowhere. I think a lot of the fans who watch the show closely have been following the breadcrumbs the whole time. So I feel like, and sometimes it's funny, you'll be writing something and you won't even realize that you've been setting up something that ends up happening. It just grows organically in some ways. So he's been saying that he's been writing him as, you know, as queer since intentionally, like fully intentionally since season 2. So it is not meaningful that we have these parallels with, you know, but that we just talked about with Shannon and Eddie and Buck and Taylor, and with Buck and Eddie and Chimney and Maddie. It is not intentional. And then you have, this is a Buck heavy episode right after an Eddie heavy episode, directly paralleling each other. And then super obvious that we have this display of this gay couple.
Yep.
Such an interesting choice.
So, yeah, yeah.
It's the gay couple that shows him what true love is.
Mm-hmm. Also, I just want to say, commend 911. How dare you make me feel so emotionally attached and then damaged by characters in 3 minutes.
2 minutes.
That was actually super rude. Yeah.
It happens. It happens so much. Like
they do it so well.
TJ asked me, like, when that montage started, he was like, is this a different show? And I was like, no, this is them introducing us to this very sweet gay old couple and telling us their love story right before they kill them both.
Yeah.
For maximum emotional damage.
Does this count as a bury your gaze?
And I don't think so.
They've had a fulfilling life.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Just
but I had the
throwing that
same
out there.
thought. I had the same thought.
Oh, did you?
I think it's sad, but it's also so, I think it's very sweet and romantic the way that situation
It
kind of
was.
played out. Just not wanting to live your life without your other half. I just and not in a go onto an overpass and be insane way like we saw in the beginning, but in the beautiful kind of actual soulmates kind of
They
way.
just wanted to be together forever.
Yeah.
And they were
in the
like,
afterlife.
Like, yeah. Like they were on so much of the same page that they
I love that trope.
could not exist
it hurts, but I
without
love
each
that
other.
trope.
Yeah. And this is actually one of the few scenes that Buck and Eddie are together
Yeah.
in that. And Eddie's the one kind of like helping.
Eddie's the first one that he calls to.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And Eddie,
it's his partner and then his dad.
We are gonna
That's the order of
find
operations.
Buddy, no matter what.
Oh, always. Always.
Oh yeah.
It's
listen.
also,
We've been
like,
making stuff in season 1. Like,
This is why we brought up Eddie in every single episode of season 1. We can make it happen
to do something
when he doesn't even exist in the universe. I just wanted to say something real quick about having Eddie and Bobby being called over by Buck. Like, Buck does call Eddie first, and Eddie, even though like they're obviously doing their jobs, Eddie is very much in, well, Bobby to an extent, but in a like support system kind of role, like the way that Eddie and Bobby share a look when they know that there's nothing. They're not
triaging
a
patient; they're triaging Buck.
They really are, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of the last episode where Hen couldn't bring herself to administer the morphine or whatever it was to the horse, so Bobby took care of that for her. So this kind of related a little bit to me, like Eddie was there and knew that Buck couldn't do anything about it, but was still like, trying to support him, but he and Bobby knew, and again, they were triaging Buck. So I think to have them, and specifically Eddie, there in that support role for Buck, like not was it Thomas, because there was nothing else they could do. So I think that is not insignificant.
Well, and they're the two characters that know Buck best. Like, and I am including Maddie in that to an extent, because she has been gone and doesn't know this Buck as well. And like that's his dad and his husband.
It's his partner. You literally can't say it's not his partner, because they literally call each other their partners.
I don't make the rules, okay?
Just call him like you see him.
Just call, that is that man's husband.
Yeah.
So this other quote is very short, and it's from the same Paste article that I read a couple things from earlier. The interviewer said, not to put too much on the show or on your character, but I think in our current cultural climate, a character like Buck is more important than ever. Not a question. But Oliver said, the show is an action show in one sense, but to me, that's just the hook. That's what gets you to watch. Once you start watching, there's a lot more at play. It's a social commentary. Buck gets to be a character that's the opposite of toxic masculinity, which is ripe in the culture that we live in.
Yeah.
Haven't we said that from the first episode.
From the first episode.
I love when they validate us.
Oliver is just validating us so much. Retroactively.
I think we're just like, there's some sort of like, we're on the same like brain wavelength, and I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
This is a little off topic, but I feel like some of the Destiel to Buddie pipeline. So
we could do a whole episode about that too.
well, and it's not really like a parallel. It's just like I remember like some of the things people were saying when 911 first like, came out, and it was like flooding my timeline when I didn't want anything to do with it at the time. Like everyone was like, yeah, watch it. Buck is like basically Dean, which I don't agree with. I don't agree with that.
They have similarities.
Yes. On the surface.
Right? On the surface, but I think like overall, no.
But he's like that he could be like I think the word macho was used for Buck, and I was like, I don't see it.
Well, they used macho for Dean either, and look how he turned out.
I don't see Dean as macho either, really. Like,
I was just gonna say, like the hook that people were using on the timeline does not align with the characters that I'm seeing now. So I'm just saying, I think also when you look at it, like the retrospective of knowing all that we know about these characters versus knowing just what you see in season 1, and not looking, and people not delving too deeply into characterization and stories and stuff like that. I could see where they're like, well, this is AU Dean, this is Dean the firefighter, this is Dean if his mom didn't die. That I could see where that come from. I just remember I was inadvertently in the Destiel to Buddie pipeline because I was already in the pipeline when it happened, and I just remember this. Eddie showing up. I'm like, God damn it, not again.
Can't escape.
Trapped.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely parallels to be made and similarities between Dean Cass and Buck and Eddie, but let it be known they are completely separate, their own three-dimensional characters. Yes. But like, I think I see what Syl was trying to get at was that kind of how people view Dean is how people were viewing like early Buck.
Yes.
And it's kind of like not just the persona that both of them are trying to portray, but it's kind of what Oliver said earlier in the article that I read about how like, yeah, like that could have been just like that normal kind of character that's like a womanizer, but he's so much more. Right, because that's not really what he is or what it was about.
They're just a couple disaster bisexuals.
Yes,
in love,
same thing.
In love with their best friend.
Yeah,
I think there is something to be said though for having these two characters, especially Dean, who we know has supposed to be this like super macho. Like we said, super macho guy, that like pendulum swang so far over into the macho side, it came
they heteroed too close to the sun.
Yes. So I think that is, and again, that is a very just like surface level reading of Dean and of Buck specifically in season 1. So like when they heteroed too close to the sun, that it came all the way back around and like boom, they're bisexual. Like
that's how that happens.
That's how bisexuals are born.
You go too far around, and then all of a sudden you find yourself.
Also, not again off topic, but something that reminded me about like the whole Cass Misha pipeline to Ryan and Eddie. Like the whole thing about like Ryan was supposed to be there for, I think he said like a couple episodes.
One episode.
No, he said a couple episodes, but they were trying out with the first one to see how it goes.
He was originally only signed on for one, I believe.
Oh, I thought it was they had him for a couple episodes, and seeing how the first one went, they would do more.
Okay.
I think
maybe
that's
I'm
what it was.
Remembering that wrong, because we just talked about that.
But yeah, it was an article that just came out, I think.
So wild.
Anyways,
So
continue,
wild,
Sil, with
because
your,
that is
But yeah, oh no, it
connection.
was the one that just came out. It's like he is the Misha Collins of the
yeah,
911
that's what I was gonna
universe.
say.
Yeah.
He's the Misha Collins of 911. Not what's his face?
If I ever have to see someone compare that man to Cass and Misha Collins
Hashtag
again,
that man.
gonna commit violence. Be so fucking for real right now.
Anyway, that was it.
Anyway,
I think that was a great inclusion.
I have one more art. It's not an article. It was another interview. What did I title this as? I think it was actually the same interview, just a different part of it. So the interviewer is basically like, is Buck ever gonna find true love? And Oliver says, I hope so. And then blah, blah, blah. The thing about like the audience not liking other women. And then he said, there are things possibly growing, but nothing has kind of cemented itself in Buck's life yet. And I wrote, which could mean nothing. And he also in that interview said that he doesn't think Buck will revert back to his womanizing ways. Which, you know.
We know.
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah. It's so interesting because so much of the foundation for what on both aspects for what Buck and Eddie are looking for is found in each other. And I think, Meg, what you said earlier when we were talking about Maddie and Chimney, about how they haven't caught up to what like their friendship actually is. And I love that parallel so much because that is exactly Buck and Eddie. Like, we all know they are.
Except it's harder because they're both men and neither of them
have ever had a best friend before.
Allegedly. Well, yes, but
Yeah.
neither of them allegedly, like, because we don't know Eddie's story for sure yet. But neither of them allegedly knew or that they were attracted to men. So and they never had a best friend before, so they were like, this is normal behavior.
Well, I think it's
For best friends, that's how that works.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's so funny because Buck is so clearly attracted to Eddie. And
I
he
know.
just doesn't
He doesn't know.
He doesn't understand what that is, and he's such a puppy running after Eddie. Like, it's just like, oh
like,
my
of
gosh.
course he's the most attractive one. You should see
Yeah.
his kid. Of course you won like the calendar thing.
Well,
like,
and he's trying to give him nicknames and all this other stuff, and like, it's just so loud, and I can't believe he can't hear himself. But I also kind of love, or later when Buck realizes, oh, I do like dudes. Like, that's what that feeling is. He cannot see Eddie in that light yet. I think he's just
No, that's like a do not press the red button situation.
Exactly. And
That's
it's
his
and it's so against his nature to not press the red button when he sees it. I just think Eddie is just a Catholic, half Mexican man who was in the army, and was raised with quite a lot of machismo, and
again, comes all the way back around.
just so that man has so much work to do.
I'm so excited.
Really
I
does.
can't wait. I can't wait to watch them be in so much pain for each other.
It's gonna be amazing.
We're gonna suffer, but we're gonna be so elated about it. No, but I was I was going to tag on to what you said about how it's so against Buck's nature to not press the red button. But we see him actively avoid pressing the red button when it comes to his relationships, like the whole how he's just avoiding the way
He gaslights himself.
Yeah, that we were talking about with him and Abby, with him and Taylor. Like, that is the one red button that he does not want to push. So he just goes, let me press this other one.
Yeah.
And do something else.
Well, because if there are problems, it's not the person he is dating's fault. It's his job to fix and accommodate them.
Yeah.
So it's not like a red flag or a sign that the relationship isn't going to work out. It's a sign that he has to work harder.
Has anyone
But
ever
anyway.
told him work smarter, not harder?
Yeah, he doesn't
No.
listen.
No.
I wanted to talk about the parallel of Maddie and Buddie, specifically with
Mhm.
like with what Buck says to her and what she says to him.
Yeah.
And I feel like I said this in the last episode, but it bears saying again,
Mm-hmm.
is that, you know, he literally is like, you're dating each other. You do all these things. You're dating each other.
Just like puts it out in the open, and they're
Puts it out in the open, and they're like,
they're
"No,
like,
we're just friends."
no, of course not.
Uh-huh.
But inside, they're kind of like, oh, maybe we are, because they do end up
Oh.
having that conversation
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
without saying.
But so then in episode 4, is it 4?
Season 2?
4 and 5. 4 and
Stuck?
5. I'm thinking of two different conversations that Maddie has of 7.
Oh, of
Season 7. Episodes 4 and 5. Maddie has a couple conversations with Buck while he's losing his goddamn mind.
That's accurate.
And while those are happening, you can just see her controlling herself because she wants to say, "You guys are you and Eddie are dating so badly."
Mhm. Like, you're jealous
she
of
doesn't.
Eddie, not over, like, for the love of
She's
God.
like, it's a canon event. I can't interfere. Like, you got to
Get
figure
it
it out for
through your
yourself,
skull.
kind of thing.
Just
Yeah.
wanting to like take his head and just be like,
can't, it's a fixed point in time. You can't.
But it's just her word. It's her wording. It's her facial expressions. It's like everything that she's like, you should realize this. I don't. How
why
do
don't you understand
that you're dating, that this is about Eddie? And then in episode 5, we have the whole I lied to my best friend's face. So he's not having like a sexuality crisis. He's not really upset about like being left. He's
Mhm.
upset that he lied to Eddie. And she's like,
ridiculous.
well, I just don't think you know what you're really feeling. And then, like, if you have something to tell Eddie, you will in your own time, you fucking idiot. Like,
This woman has got to just pound a bottle of wine at least a week.
does.
Just being like,
She's gonna be
Well,
sick
you
of
know-
it one day, or she's gotta be sick of it one day and would just be like, fuck.
she just sitting there like, when at her
Who did she
at her
talk to
wedding
about
at
it?
her
Josh.
wedding with Chimney, and Chimney was just
It's
like,
gotta be Josh.
yeah, she has to be Josh.
It can't be Chimney.
No, but
yeah, that's what I was saying. It can't be Chimney.
no, I just thought it was so funny at their wedding when Chimney was like, Buck and Tommy, is that a thing? And she's like, yes, like, this woman is so pressed.
She's tired.
So if we're right, and it is Chimney that she's like divulging, not Chimney, if it is Josh that she's divulging all of this annoyance with, and we're gonna be seeing Josh,
Maddie and Buck.
Maddie and Buck in a scene at Dispatch where he seems to
A
have
big scene.
80% of his heartfelt conversations about his bisexual awakening.
Mhm.
So interesting.
Which could mean nothing.
Totally coincidental for absolutely no reason at all.
The only hint that, well, it's not even a hint, but the only comment that I always go back to when it comes to Chimney, like maybe having an idea, would be like at the basketball game where he's like, "Oh, so I'm just your basketball beer."
Yeah.
So I mean, at that point, I'm like, okay, maybe he doesn't talk to Maddie about it, but maybe he talks to Hen about it.
Hen.
Oh, he definitely talks to
Him?
Hen about it.
And Hen and Karen have a pool.
And Robbie, whenever he comes home from
I love
The
the idea that
landlord
Robbie
war.
thinks they're a divorce.
Wait, so this is
It's
this
such a
is
good
canon, right?
fanon.
Where did
Yeah.
where did this originate from?
Fic.
Yeah, fanfic.
But it's just like
Yeah.
so
No, I
widespread,
think
and
it
I
was
love
it was a specific fic that I remember, and that just kind of.
And now everyone, like,
Adopted the
in general, writes it that way.
Imagine that being your legacy. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Headcanons for all.
We have a karaoke specific parallel
Yeah, we do.
where they're singing a song that
Mm.
describes their relationship.
Mhm.
And Syl, I think it was you. Was it you?
I don't know. Tell me, what did I do?
Someone mentioned how Maddie, while they're singing, like puts her arm around Chimney
Oh yeah.
and like pulls him in. And for the 5.5 millisecond shot that we get of
They
them
do
singing,
the same thing, and they're
Oh.
pointing
Eddie
at
puts
each
his
other.
arm around Buck, and Eddie is the Maddie of the relationship, right? Like when you're paralleling the characters of like their
Mhm.
personalities
Mhm.
and like how
Their
they
past
are a partner.
experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then Chim and
So,
Buck are the yappers.
Mhm.
Ooh.
Oh.
Love that. Karaoke is just like very, I think, special to the Buckley siblings.
Very interesting. They're the kids who put on like plays and made their parents watch them.
oh, absolutely. Except their
Yeah.
parents didn't watch it, so they
I-
were just doing it for themselves.
I was
Mhm.
that child. Me and my cousins used to put on dance shows and plays, and the whole family would have to watch.
Oh.
The personality
That's
of
so
Maddie, how much
cute.
she likes singing, right, is very, and she's the older sibling. It's very much me coded, and I would make my younger brother like dress up and sing with
Oh,
me
yeah.
and perform in front of.
Yep, my
Our
cousin
family
would
members.
choreograph whole dances for us. It was
Ooh,
I
costume.
remember one time
amazing.
we were doing Spice Girls, and I had him put on a black tutu on his head so he could be Scary Spice.
Uh-huh.
I was like, I've just forgot all the Spice Girls names. Anyway, yes, karaoke. Even though you are brief, the amount that we have of you, you are still so valuable in the Buddy lore.
Carrying so much.
hmm
Yeah. And then I guess the last thing I have that I can think of happens on the date with Allie
hmm
when he's trying to like get reassured that like she doesn't feel some sort of like has to repay him for saving her. And she's like,
Oh my god.
"You didn't save me though." That was Eddie. And it's like, oh, we've been here 2 seconds. We're talking
Mm.
about Eddie. Okay, interesting. And then
It's like Tim
he's like,
Tim
he's like,
Minear
I told
always
him to do
bringing up
that,
the other
which
one.
is not true at all. You wouldn't have even had time to tell him. And she goes, oh, well, maybe I should have called Eddie then. And Buck is like, ha. It's like, it's
Like-
so brief, but his face is like,
Don't go there.
I hate that idea.
Like already this kind of
I'm gonna put that feeling in a box over here.
yeah, this like protective but also like slightly
Why does that make
possessive
me feel nauseous?
feeling. Eddie's my friend.
Question mark.
Eddie's mine.
Don't look at him.
Do
Don't call
not
him.
do not
Don't talk to
perceive him coming from someone who so desperately wants to be perceived.
Yeah.
He's the only one that can perceive me, nobody else. Oh my gosh.
No.
That's wild too. Like literally, can Buck go 5 minutes without anybody, including himself, talking about Eddie? And I think the answer is no.
No.
Just like Eddie, 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 Eddie.
What else does he have? Oh, it's like our video.
It's like our video.
Eddie?
That's one of my
Eddie.
favorite things
Eddie,
that has come
Eddie,
out of this
Eddie, Eddie,
podcast,
Eddie,
actually.
Eddie, Eddie, Eddie.
Oh my god.
We can put what just happened here as the next
Mhm.
version of that.
just this section. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of the specific episode. Yeah, we're so buck coded. We're so obsessed with him.
Can't not
Ugh.
talk about Eddie.
Mhm.
Cannot talk about Eddie, even though he did not have an arc in this episode.
We can always
He's-
make it about Eddie,
He's still that bitch.
the
Pretty
it girl
much.
of season
Girl
8.
princess. Yeah.
So this man has
The
been in
people's princess,
this
yeah.
this series for 8 episodes, and barely in this one, and already
Like, but I think that is so true. Like the way Eddie and Maddie have so seamlessly like blended into the ensemble. Like they were the perfect additions, and it's just like cannot imagine. Like that's what makes season 1 so difficult for so many people. It's because pivotal
for me
characters
specifically,
aren't
because
here.
I started my first watch. I started in 2.
Mhm.
I'm not saying anything.
Started Supernatural in season 4. I don't want to hear about it.
I'm the only completionist.
So no,
Well,
I wanted to ask
Meg as well.
Meg, because I think we've wrapped
Meg.
up Slow Burn, but like as like an outro, just because we're talking about Eddie.
As
Shocking.
we do.
Since you were watching it live, like how long did it take for you specifically, and then like your perception of like fandom in general to be like
This
yes, obsessed?
Immediately for me. Like it really was. It was just like, yep, I'm right there. I'm right there with all of them in Eddie's opening scene. I thought I wasn't sure exactly what he was gonna be in that first episode. I liked how annoyed Buck was with him. Annoyed. I liked how those feathers were ruffled, and I liked how Buck was just so upset that the new guy wasn't getting like the probie treatment, like wasn't being treated the way he thought he should be.
Yeah.
Which I just foreshadows how Buck treats Robbie when he's having big feelings. And it felt fairly similar within the fandom. I think it was really like Maddie, Jennifer Love Hewitt joining was more of the thing that was like really talked about because she's a big name because she's Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Yeah.
He was really, I think I remember him being positively received by everybody. They thought the "what a man" thing was hilarious. And
true.
And so many people are like, oh, so Buck thinks this guy's super hot because the way they filmed it was Buck's point of view.
It's his point of view.
Yes.
But yeah, so and so my best friend and I have a podcast, and we have talked about the 118. We've done a few episodes about 118 cast, and I think we did them during maybe season 3. Maybe. And that's where my best friend Carla.
Who did you do in an I don't think I've listened to those episodes.
Wait, you can plug your podcast here.
My podcast, I haven't recorded a new episode in forever. But I
was gonna ask you.
I
was gonna be like, on this recording, when are you making new episodes?
When life stops being so chaotic for both of us. So my best friend and I have a podcast. It's called Bedwet or Behead. And we basically play Fuck, Marry, Kill with fictional characters. So it's character analysis from TV shows and movies and sometimes book characters that we love. And then we decide of those 3 characters who we're going to fuck, marry, kill. I distinctly remember telling Carla we couldn't have Buck and Eddie together in a pairing because I refused. and
fair.
Like I love all the characters, so I was like, I don't really necessarily want to kill any of them. But that's where my friend Carla, my co-host, came up with the term unbaked cookie for Buck. So if you guys want to, I haven't. Yeah, I guess he is a baby.
Love that.
Yeah, and we had talked about
delicious.
We had talked about trying and doing it again later on. Specifically because of Buck's character growth, and his arc, because he is cooked. He's a baked cookie for the most part. He's a little soft.
When did you do episodes? Like what season were you on?
So we've done several 911 episodes. The most recent one was in 2021, and that was a crack one. It was we talked about Anna, Maddie, and Taylor Kelly.
Oh my gosh.
We just picked 3 random characters on our little thing. Our 29th episode was 911, and that was in 2021, and we did Bobby, Buck, and Hen.
Oh.
Man, who did you guys kill?
these are hard.
They're hard, and we do have like long, like it's tough. We have actually fought about it.
I can imagine.
I've never been forgiven for some of them, not by her, but by other people.
Oh. I know that I've fought before on your show, but I don't remember about what characters. I think it was Marble. Because I think Carla was killing Steve.
Oh.
Carla has some hot takes. Like,
I want to know who the other options were.
So we did. I can't find it right now. The other one, if we did Bobby, Hen, and Buck, we did Chim, Eddie, and Athena. Most likely as the other one, because the point was to make them difficult.
Yeah.
Like the point was never to have one that was a really obvious one. It's like we wouldn't be like Buck, Eddie, and Tommy. What are we gonna do?
Who are we killing?
But yeah, so the podcast is Bedwetter Behead, and if you'd like to hear some of my thoughts and my feelings at that time in my viewing of the show, don't listen, because I think I have some really bad takes.
This is the worst plug I've
I
ever
know,
heard.
it's amazing. No, it's a lot of fun. It's two friends who drink and play fuck, marry, kill fictional characters, because if we do it in real life, it's bad. So,
generally speaking, better to
real
do
people.
hypothetical.
Yeah.
We're told killing people is bad.
Yeah.
We have been told.
Super bad.
But yes, listen to Meg's podcast. It is a lot of fun, and they like, it sounds silly goofy, but it's actually a really good character analysis. And is also silly goofy.
Yeah, we do get pretty deep into our character analysis, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. If you want to hear us be completely hammered trying to play, you can listen to our Criminal Minds episode. It was the third one we had recorded in a row, and we were completely drunk by the end of it. I think I was yelling.
I need to join this.
I was yelling about pasta at one point.
Yeah, they have to come back because I want to listen, but also because we need to go on their podcast.
We have been on a very, very long hiatus because
I know
life with kids and moving and all kinds of stuff has just been a lot. But anyways, this is a very terrible plug, and it's why Carla's normally the one who does it.
You did a great job, though.
Yeah,
you tried.
You know, I can't not self-deprecate. I just
that's true.
It's in my bones.
Very endearing.
Hannah's like, no, it's not. It's really annoying.
I mean, it is because I understand you too well. So it's annoying in the way that I don't like why you do that. In the same way I don't like how other characters that I care about do that.
I'm a character. I love it.
I was talking about Buck because we're on the
I
show
know.
right now.
We're all characters, aren't we?
We are. We're all main characters.
Thank you guys so much for having me, though. I had so much fun.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you
joining us.
for
It was so much
joining
fun.
us.
I get so excited to talk about Buddie with other people, finally.
I know. It is so exciting.
Always willing to talk about Buddie, 911, everything.
It's 2025-8.
366.
Yep.
Oh, more sixes.
God damn.
Rachel, Rachel, I don't want to think about sixes anymore.
We gotta sign off. We gotta sign off and stop.
They
the
cut me
recording.
off. they say this is done.
Okay, I'll just say take a buddy with you with Meg because she's my friend.
I finally dragged you. I finally
I brought
dragged
you
you.
She's your
here.
buddy.
I brought you here if we really think about it.
You're planting the seed over and over again, even though I kept telling you no.
You can take credit, Meg. It's fine.
I often bully my friends into watching the stuff that I like.
We are the Oliver
Valid.
Stark school of how we show affection.
It only took 7 years and the wrong two men to kiss
boy.
Finally,
God.
Hannah was like,
But-
yep, this is going to hurt me enough.
Perfect. Remember, don't flash the greater Los Angeles area.
But if you do,
Take a buddy with you.
Thank you for listening to the Buddy System podcast from start to finish.
we literally cannot shut up about 911, so please come talk to us on your favorite social media platform.
We're at Buddy System Pod everywhere. That's BUDDIE System Pod.
Leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to get a personal shout out in the next episode. The Buddy System is a Nerd Virgin media production featuring music from Divinity.
Can't get enough of the buddies? Subscribe to our Patreon for access to exclusive content and our Discord community.
Catch you next time. And don't forget,
Bring a buddy with you.